Hello guys, this is Dark Fox Sage 2 and we are back with our new fanfic, which is What If Naruto Fell in Love with Red-Eyed Women Part 2. And if you enjoy this fanfic, then please press the like button and please subscribe to the channel. It motivates me to upload more fanfic like these for you all. Now let's start the fanfiction. Chunin Exams Part 1. Several weeks after the wave, Team 8 had made it back and reported the entire mission in great detail to the Hokage, much to the chagrin of the old man. After the team had been dismissed, the Hokage asked that Naruto remain behind. Naruto did as he was asked. Naruto, now that you've revealed the secret to your teammates, I want you to stick to the law for everyone else. Not until they've reached the rank of Junin are they permitted to know. Understood. Naruto nodded. Sure thing, old man. The old man sighed as he took a puff of his pipe before telling Naruto the next part of why he detained him here. Naruto, the secret is far too deadly to be let out. Although it pains me to do this, I'm authorizing you to use any force you deem necessary to stop the spread of the rumor. I trust both of your teammates, but with the times ahead, I would not be surprised if word somehow got out. The only thing I can compensate for this is turning this into an ongoing S-rank mission. Naruto nodded slowly. I guess I could take it. The old man spoke to Naruto for a few moments more before dismissing him, asking that he report to the hospital for psychological testing to make sure that his mind was still stable after killing both of his targets on the mission. About a week later, the nurses at the hospital quickly made sure that Naruto was okay, providing a minor medical healing jutsu to help his mind recover before discharging him. Since then, Naruto had been training and trying to constantly improve himself. 6 days after they got back, Kurenai had appeared with 3 slips of paper. Morning boys. To get straight to the point, I've nominated you 3 for the Chunin exams. Just sign the forms and turn up at room 301 at the academy by 4 p.m. tomorrow. Until then, you're dismissed. Kurenai poofed out of existence while Shikamaru looked over his form. Mendokusei. Naruto smiled at Shikamaru. Everything's troublesome for you, Shikamaru. Shikamaru sighed. While Choji opened a packet of chips, sharing them around as they went off to sign the forms and discuss the possibilities of the exam. Next day, 2 p.m. Naruto, Shikamaru and Choji were walking towards the academy when they heard a yell, so they went to check it out. When they got there, they saw a pair of Sunanin, a guy and a girl, facing off against 3 academy graduates. The male Sunanin was holding one boy up by the collar, who was trying desperately to get free. The female sighed. If anything happens, I'm not taking the blame. The black-clad ninja smirked and drew his hand back for the punch when he felt 3 people staring at him from behind. He turned around to see 3 Konoha genins staring at him. What do you 3 want? Naruto looked lazily at the boy. We want you to put him down. The boy smirked. Are you going to make me? Shikamaru sighed. Mendokusei. Naruto shrugged. For once, I agree with you, Shikamaru. Kankuro was aware that the blonde masked kid was no longer with his friends, but directly behind him, holding a very sharp weapon to his throat. The Sunanin and the 3 academy students hadn't even seen the boy move. Put him down. Now. Kankuro dropped the kid, who fell on his butt. Kankuro was unfastening the straps of the object on his back when Naruto became aware of a very disturbing aura very close by. Kankuro, stop. You're a disgrace to our village. But Gaara, they started it. I don't care. Shut up or I'll kill you. Both the black-clad boy and the girl seemed to flinch at this, while the redhead turned to Naruto. I apologize for his actions. Naruto dismissed it. No problem. Only a few egos were bruised, nothing too bad. Gaara's eyes narrowed at Naruto. I'm interested in you. Who are you? Naruto looked at the boy. Uzumaki Naruto. And you are? Sabaku no Gaara. Naruto nodded. I see. I look forward to seeing you in the Chunin exams, Gaara. As do I, Uzumaki Naruto. Gaara used Shushin to disappear, leaving the rest of them to clean up. Naruto turned to the boy who Kankuro had been about to knock out. You alright? The boy nodded slowly. Well, I'll catch you around. By the way, I don't think I've seen you before. What's your name? The boy's eyes lightened up. Konohamaru. Naruto smiled at the boy. Nice to meet you, Konohamaru. Unfortunately, I can't stay for too long, I have to go and take the Chunin exams with my friends. Konohamaru nodded and got back up, staring in awe at the first person who had ever called him by his name except his grandfather. Naruto turned to the two Sunanin. Could I get your names? The boy nodded. Kankuro. The girl flushed slightly as she answered. Tamari. Naruto nodded to each of them. Well, Kankuro-san, Tamari-san. Good luck in the exam. Choji and Shikamaru caught up with Naruto as they got the academy, waiting for the doors to open. Team 8 took this time to survey the potential opponents. They quickly dismissed the ones who bragged about themselves to their teams and others and instead paid attention to the teams either talking quietly amongst themselves or who said nothing at all. Finally, the doors were opened and the teams made their way inside. After walking up 2 flights of stairs, they needed to change to another stairwell to get up to the final floor. However, Naruto's genjutsu senses were tingling as he saw what it was. 2 people under rather decent henges for the genin they were posing as were guarding a door that was apparently 301, but Naruto could tell, not just by the shoddy genjutsu around it, but from the fact they had only gone up 2 flights of stairs. The genin tried to go past the pair, only to be shoved back by the genin. Naruto realized what was happening immediately. They were trying to weed out the truly weak ones from even taking the first test. Naruto was fine by that as he kept his team walking. However, one particular Uchiha happened to do something fairly stupid. It's nice to see you're guarding, but aren't you guarding the wrong room? This is only the 2nd level, not the 3rd. Drop the genjutsu. People started murmuring amongst themselves as Naruto slapped his forehead. Naruto could feel the genjutsu being undone, and after a small fight between the genin guarding the door and Sasuke, which Lee put an end to, Naruto turned back to the others. Naruto called out lazily to Sasuke. Sasuke, you do realize what that genjutsu was meant to do, right? All eyes turned to the boy. Yeah, it was meant to stop us from getting to 301. Naruto nodded. Exactly. If you had noticed it, why didn't you just lead your team past it and keep going? We could have gotten rid of all of these guys here before the first test, cutting a huge portion of the examiners off before we have to begin the test. Sasuke hated to admit it, but Naruto's logic was impeccable, as always. Lee's eyes caught fire as he rushed up to his rival. Naruto-kun, your fires of youth are burning as bright as ever. You are indeed my eternal rival. Naruto smiled, translating it for himself as, you're looking well. Hey, Lee, how's Guy-sensei? Lee did a nice guy pose to help illustrate his point. Guy-sensei's springtime of youth is an example to us all. Naruto translated this in his own mind to, he's great. After a bit more friendly banter, Tenten and Neji walked up. Hi Tenten, Neji. Both of them greeted him in their usual manner, Tenten smiling and Neji giving a nod in his direction. Both teams walked down the corridor together, followed by Team 7, up the stairwell and down the final corridor to the real 301. Once they pushed open the doors, they were acutely aware of the entire room with their gaze on them. Team Guy ignored the gazes, taking a free seat. Team 8 just stood there, sizing up the people in the room. The doors burst open and Team 7 came in, Ino and Sakura having one of their all too frequent arguments again, but they stopped when they felt the atmosphere of the room. Naruto smiled of them. Glad to see you made it as well. They all nodded and they turned as Kiba rather loudly introduced the presence of his team coming through the door. Naruto, Choji, Shikamaru. It's been a while since I've seen you 3. Naruto smiled at Kiba. Hey Kiba, Shino, Hinata. The 3 nodded in Naruto's direction. Naruto looked at Akamaru. How's Akamaru, Kiba? The dog gave a happy bark. Great. Naruto pulled out a piece of dried meat and flicked it at Akamaru, who caught it expertly in his mouth. Kiba smiled at Naruto when Naruto felt someone coming up to them on the right. Why don't you lot grasp the atmosphere? Screaming like a bunch of school girls, geez. Naruto looked at the silver-haired bespectacled guy lazily. We already did. Is it a crime to catch up with old friends? The boy smiled at him. Not really, but there's a better time to do it. Anyway, there are a lot of powerful people here. Many of who have taken the exam before. I've taken the exam before as well. Naruto looked at the man. How many times? 7. Naruto nodded. You seem to have a purpose for coming here apart from the whole, grasp the atmosphere thing. The boy nodded. How about I give some tips to my cute underclassmen? Kabuto reached into his ninja pouch and took out a deck of cards. I've collected information on a lot of the exam's entrants and burnt the information onto these cards with my chakra. Kabuto pulled the top one off, but it was blank. Sakura, being the smart one, pointed out the obvious. Kabuto-san, how could those have information on them? They're blank. Naruto shook his head. A genjutsu of fuinjutsu of some kind. Kabuto nodded in agreement. He put his finger to the card and began swiveling it around before a small puff of smoke covered the card. Once it cleared, the card was no longer blank. In fact, it had a map of the world overlaid with a three-dimensional bar graph. Almost everyone looked at the card in wonder as Kabuto explained. This shows the number of participants each country has sent. I have information on all of the people attending this exam. The only unfortunate thing is that I have practically no information on the 3 from the hidden sound. This is the first team they've sent to an exam, so I haven't had the chance to find out much about them. Sasuke saw his chance. Can you show us some? Kabuto looked at him. Any in particular? 3. Rock Lee, Sabaku no Gaara and Uzumaki Naruto. Kabuto put the first card away and picked the deck up. This will be easy since you know their names. Kabuto swiped the deck, pulling out 3 cards. He fanned them out and began channeling chakra into one of them. First, Uzumaki. Naruto ripped the card out from under him as soon as the chakra revealed the information. Naruto began scanning it. He couldn't risk the secret getting out, so he ripped through it, finding the information to be startlingly accurate. He even found it in there. He smiled. You're good. The fact that a certain something is in here proves you're either very nosy with friends in high places, or you're not a genin. Naruto shoved some chakra into the card and deleted the offending passage, handing the card back. Sasuke smirked. Scared of us finding out something, Naruto? Naruto smiled lazily. However, his insiders were in total turmoil. Not for me, but for you. I have authorization to use whatever force I deem necessary to stop that piece of information getting out by the Hokage himself. Normally, the offending person would be put to death immediately. This caught everyone's attention. Naruto smiled as he looked at Kabuto. Read the card. Kabuto went back to reading the card. Uzumaki Naruto, Taiko of Team 8 of the Konoha Rookies. His teammates are Nara Shikamaru and Akamichi Choji. Their Junin sensei is If Kurenai. He graduated from the academy earlier this year with a perfect record, earning him the title of Rookie of the Year. His ninjutsu, genjutsu, taijutsu and armed taijutsu abilities are off the charts, making him high chunin level to low junin level. It's rumored that he also has a knack for fuinjutsu, making him the first academy graduate in 14 years to have learned how to make his own seal scrolls and explosive notes before he even left the academy. His family or clan abilities are a complete mystery, due to the severe shortage of knowledge of his blood family. He has also invented his own taijutsu style, called the Kajkin. Out of all the examinees here, Naruto's ninjutsu, genjutsu and armed taijutsu abilities are unmatched by anyone, but his regular taijutsu is about equal to Rock Lee's of Konoha. Missions completed include 8D class, 1C class, which was apparently a disguised upper A rank mission, and even an ongoing S class. It seems that apart from chakra exhaustion on the C rank mission, Naruto has come back from all his missions completely unscathed. Naruto smiled at him. The fact that only myself and my Junin senseis know the full extent of my abilities makes me wonder exactly who you are. By now, the majority of the room were quaking in their boots at this boy. Even with his abilities, coming back from an A-rank mission completely unharmed, suffering from only chakra exhaustion. This kid was scary. Kabuto put the card away and activated another card. This was Rock Lee. Rock Lee, member of Team Guy. He's 1 year older than all of you. Teammates are Hyuga Neji and Tenten. Their Junin sensei is Maida Guy. Rock Lee's ninjutsu and genjutsu abilities are non-existent, as are his family or clan jutsus, but his taijutsu, both long range and short, are about equal to Uzumaki Naruto's. Mission dossier records show he has completed 20 D rank and 12 C rank missions. Kabuto felt a kunai pressing against his neck. It was held by the hand of Naruto. No one in the room had seen him move. I knew it. Apart from his team and me, no one has that much detailed information on Lee. Only 4 people apart from myself know the full extent of my abilities. All of them have been my senseis for the past 7 years and who I am close friends with. You're not a genin. Your chakra capacity is far too massive for you to even be a chunin. The fact that you knew about a certain something gives me permission to slit your throat here and now. Naruto looked to the front of the room in time to see an explosion of smoke and a booming voice reach the genin. Uzumaki, what the hell do you think you're doing? Naruto smiled lazily at Ibiki. Just doing a mission, Ibiki-san. Ibiki scowled at Naruto. You can complete the mission later. This is as good a time as any to say this, so let me make one thing clear. There will be fighting in this exam, however, you will not engage another person unless given express permission by an examiner. Even then, killing unless also permitted is forbidden. Pigs who go against my rule will be failed immediately, understood? Now the genin had completely forgotten about Naruto and were completely transfixed by the man in front of them. Ibiki held up a tab with the number 1 on it. All of you will approach the examiners with your 3 application forms. Once your genin cell has been marked off, take 1 number from this box. That number is the seat you will use during this part of the exam. Once you are all seated, we will begin handing out the papers. Everyone handed in their application forms, got a numbered tab and was assigned a seat. Once everyone was seated, the examiners began placing the tests face down on the desk. Once that had been done, Ibiki started tapping the piece of chalk against the board. I will now explain the rules of this test. Listen carefully, as I'm not going to repeat it and I will not answer questions. Rule 1. Each of you will start with 10 points. This test works via a subtraction method of marking. For example, if you answer 1 question wrong, you get a single point deducted. 5 questions wrong and you lose half your points. Rule 2. The overall pass-fail is determined not by your individual scores, but by the combined score of your team. Rule 3. If you are found to be conducting any suspicious activity that could be associated with cheating, you will have 2 points deducted. Meaning, even if you get all the answers right, but get caught 5 times, you fail. This isn't so much a rule as the result of what will happen should someone fail. Until the third part of the exam, everything relies on teamwork. If one of you fails, so does the other 2 members of your team. This test will be done in the space of an hour. At the 45-minute mark, I will give you the 10th question, regardless of whether or not you have completed the rest of them. Now, begin. No one failed to hesitate with the order and turned the pages over. Naruto smirked. Why did this situation seem so familiar? Probably from the graduation written test. These questions were much harder to answer than your average genin should be able to answer. Naruto sighed. The purpose of this test was to cheat. Since he didn't have much to cheat with, he decided to use his own head to write the answers. Naruto was aware of 3 other people writing with him, namely 2 nobodies and Haruno Sakura, which was quickly joined by 3 more, both Hyugas and Sasuke, who had their bloodline limits engaged. After Naruto answered the first 9 questions, he sat back. Naruto felt the familiar chakra of Shikamaru reaching out with his Kajimane and take hold of Choji, writing the answers to the test on his paper. After a while, Naruto saw one of the examiners throw a kunai straight past his head, which he leant out of the way of and heard a thunk behind him. Naruto looked around to see that the kunai had pierced the exam paper of the genin behind him. The boy stood up. Wah, what's the meaning of this? The examiner smirked. I've caught you cheating 5 times. You fail. Get your teammates and get out. 2 other genins, none too happy with their teammate, got up and left along with the one that had caused them to fail. Straight away, another examiner spoke. Number 23, fail. Numbers 43 and 27 fail. The 3 got up. After that, a steady stream of genin were caught and left the room. By the time the announcement of the 10th question came around, the overall number had been reduced to just over 100. Ibiki strode to the front of the room and turned to face the genin. Now, it's time for the 10th question. However, before I give it to you, I need to know whether you will even take it. The genin started murmuring as Ibiki continued with the explanation. If you chose not to take it, you and your teammates will be failed immediately. However, if you do decide to take it and get it wrong, you will have the privilege of taking this exam stripped permanently. Everyone started crying out in disbelief. Kiba was the loudest. What kind of a stupid rule is that? There are people here who've taken this exam before. Ibiki laughed heartlessly. That's true. However, when they took this exam, I wasn't the examiner. Seems you lot are out of luck. However, the rules have been stated. Will you, or will you not take it? If you are uncertain as to your abilities, you should quit now and try again next time. Raise your hand if you don't want to suffer the consequences. For a moment, no one did anything. However, the man next to Naruto raised his hand. I won't take it. An examiner marked off him and his 2 teammates as they left the room. This set off a chain reaction. At least 5 more people raised their hand and they were marked off along with their teammates. Finally, there were 78 people left in the room. 80 if you included the plants, as they were called. Ibiki looked around the room. Will anyone else give up? This decision will change your life. People in Naruto's general vicinity became aware of his chuckling, which turned into full-blown laughter. Everyone stared at Naruto in disbelief. Naruto looked at Ibiki, smirking. I don't know about the others in this room, but your act isn't scaring me. I have absolute confidence in myself and both of my teammates that we will answer this question perfectly. There are no weak soldiers under a valiant commander. Get on with the question. Ibiki sighed. Naruto had blown the fear and uncertainty of every single genin in the room away and laughed at him to boot. Ibiki looked around and confirmed what he had thought and felt. Ibiki tried one last time. This is your final chance. Will any of you give up? Naruto smiled at him. We're not afraid. It was clear that no one was going to budge until they had passed the exam, so Ibiki sighed. Then, for the first test of the Chunin exams. You all pass. Every one of the genins except Naruto stopped and tried to work out exactly what he had meant. Naruto smiled and shook his head. I was kind of expecting something like this from you, Ibiki-san. Let me guess, the take or not take was the 10th question. Ibiki smiled at Naruto. Exactly. The 10th question was the choice of taking a life-altering decision or not. The first 9 questions severed the purpose of testing your information-gathering abilities. I'm sure there were some of you who could work out the answers for yourselves, but the majority of you would have realized straight away that this was not your average paper test and came to the conclusion, I have to cheat to pass. Most of you would have also realized, there is 80 people left in the room, which would imply that there's something wrong. We had 2 Chunin planted in the room to be the sources of the answers for your cheating attempts. Those of you who cheated like amateurs were weeded out. They won't survive the next stage of the exam with that kind of effort. Now, the 10th question. Once we had separated the wheat from the chaff, I put you in a hopeless situation. Take or not take. Either choice had dire consequences. Not take it and fail immediately. Take it and get it wrong, and never take it again. Let's put this into a real-life situation. Let's go with the scenario that all of you become Chunin. A Chunin is a squad leader who is responsible for handling the mission and his team's lives. You arrive at the mission center along with your squad and receive a mission. You are to infiltrate an enemy facility and steal a scroll. The number of ninja, their state of preparedness, armaments, jutsus and skill are unknown. Can you just decline the mission, because the content of the mission is unknown, enchaining today's certainty with tomorrow's uncertainty? The answer is no. As a Chunin, there will be missions you will not have a choice in. Information can be more important than a cage's life in some situations. What if that scroll contained information about another village planning to invade your own? If you obtain the information carelessly, it is likely that the enemy will feed you false information that could cost many people their lives. People who do not have the resolve to go through with missions are pigs who don't deserve the right to become Chunin. There are no weak soldiers under a valiant commander. Naruto had joined Ibiki with the last line to emphasize his previous point. Ibiki smiled at Naruto. Congratulations to every one of you. I wish you the best of luck. Both Ibiki and Naruto became aware of a dark ball just before it came crashing through the window. The black ball unfurled itself to reveal a woman in a beige trench coat, purple hair, fishnet shirt and metal leg plates. She introduced herself in a rather loud manner. There's no time to celebrate. I'm the second examiner, Mitarashi Anko. Follow me, everyone. The majority of people in the room sweat dropped as Naruto smiled. Hi there, Anko-san. Haven't seen you in a while. Anko looked at Naruto, smiling in that sadistic fashion we all love to hate. Well, if it isn't little Naruto. I'm really not surprised that there's 78 people left with you in here. Another one of your speeches. Naruto tilted his head to the side as he continued smiling. Ibiki came around the side of the banner that Anko had erected, looking slightly peeved. Can't you grasp the atmosphere, Anko? Anko smiled sheepishly before turning back to the genin. Despite the fact that there's so many of you left, by the end of the next exam, there will be less than half of you remaining. Report to Training Area 44 at 9 a.m. sharp tomorrow morning. Until then, you are dismissed. The remaining genin teams got up and left, preparing for whatever might come with the next test. Naruto led his team to his house, in the hope of some tidbits of info from his Aniki. Ibiki started collecting the papers. When he got to Naruto's, he saw that, not surprisingly, the entire test was answered. However, seeing a note at the bottom, he checked it. Ibiki-san. The mission I was about to complete involved the Sandame's law, which was about to be breached by that boy. Watch him carefully. He's not who he says he is. UN. Ibiki scowled at this. He was definitely going to be checking the boy out. He'd already had his suspicions from past exams, but having them backed up by Naruto just proved it. This boy was going to be watched very carefully. Naruto's apartment. When Naruto arrived home, Kakashi was there, reading one of his favorite orange books. Naruto didn't recognize this one. New book in the series, Nissan. Kakashi looked up. Yeah. Naruto shook his head as he led his team inside. Kakashi snapped the book shut and put it on the armrest of the seat he was in. Kakashi chuckled. News of your antics in the first part of the exam travel fast, Naruto. I suppose you want some hints for the second one. Naruto nodded. Well, the first is always a written, the second is always a field test and the last is always a tournament. The second test has the most variation out of all of the tests. However, since it's in Training Area 44, I have a feeling it's a several-day mission. Choji looked horrified while Shikamaru sighed. Mendoku-say. What are we supposed to do for food? Naruto got an idea. He looked to Kakashi. Nisan, can I have some summoning scrolls? Kakashi smiled lazily. Sure. 2 each. Those things aren't exactly cheap, you know. Naruto smiled back at Kakashi, mirroring his lazy smile. Thanks, Nisan. Naruto led his team to the supply closet, which was packed with all sorts of ninja goodies. Weapons, explosive notes, scrolls, the lot. Naruto went to a particular shelf and skimmed along some scrolls until he found a group of navy blue scrolls. Pulling them out, he placed them on the ground and closed the door with his foot. Naruto opened one particular scroll and showed them it. This is a multiple summon scroll. Basically with this you're able to summon just about anything excluding animals that require a contract to summon and a few other things. Some versions of them can even summon people. However, once it's summoned, that part of the scroll cannot be reused. For example, if you brought a basket of food, Choji, I could perform a jutsu that would seal it inside one of these circles, and when you wanted to, you could make the basket of food pop straight back into existence in front of you. Choji looked at the scroll like it was a gift from Kami himself. Choji could certainly use something like one of these on long missions. Naruto looked up at both of them. I want both of you to go to your places and get anything and everything you think you'll need for a week-long mission. Meet back here and I'll do the sealing. Both boys nodded and headed out the door to get their things. Naruto was suddenly struck by an idea. He went back to the closet and pulled out a black special summoning scroll that was used to hold a mass of weapons and procured his wind-powered trench knives. Naruto knew that while weapons were sealed, they were essentially maintained in stasis until brought back to the real world. Also, if he could create cage bunshin of his blades, they should also be kept in stasis without him having to worry about them. He had learnt Shuriken Cage Bunshin no Jutsu several months ago. The next part of his theory was that since making any kind bunshin relied on creating a copy of the original, and since Shuriken Cage Bunshin no Jutsu allowed the user to create clones of another object, it should be theoretically possible to do the same for any object. However, Shuriken were an obvious first target, since they were small and perfectly symmetrical. Creating cage bunshins of other weapons such as kunai and whatnot should prove only slightly harder. Naruto practiced making a single cage bunshin of a kunai and found that the theory was just as easily done as said. Naruto moved onto his special knives and focused an insane amount of chakra, creating about 64 shadow clones of the left-handed knife. Kakashi came into the room at this chakra spike and saw Naruto surrounded by knives. Kakashi raised an eyebrow. Do I want to know what's going on? Naruto carefully pushed his way out of the stack so as not to cut himself and got the scroll. He smiled lazily at Kakashi. Well, I had an idea for a new jutsu. Kakashi looked at the knives. A variant of Cage Shuriken. Naruto shrugged. That's the first part of it. Kakashi looked at Naruto in interest. First part. Naruto nodded and explained his reasoning. Objects that are sealed are kept in stasis. I theorized that if I created a huge number of weapon clones and sealed them, they would stay there without any effort from me and I could summon them at will. Kakashi saw the logic in this. Sure, a number of people had probably given the idea a passing thought, but Naruto had just in the space of 3 minutes brought it into reality. Considering Naruto's talent for cage bunshins and Fuin jutsus, it really actually wasn't that surprising he had made it. Naruto went back to sealing other objects into his other 2 scrolls like food, water, a medical kit, and several other things. After about 15 minutes, there was a knock at the door, and when Kakashi answered the door, Shikamaru and Choji came in with an assortment of different things. Choji naturally had brought what most people would consider a lifetime supply of snack foods. After Naruto led them to his room, he showed them how the process was done. He even allowed both boys to have a go. Neither of them managed it though, but Naruto smiled at them. Don't worry. It took me 3 months to learn how to do it without stuffing up. After everything had been sealed, Naruto handed the scrolls to the 2 boys. The three of them discussed possible plans for the second test until well after dark. After the boys left, Naruto got to bed and went to sleep. Next morning, Training Area 44. Team 8 had made it to the area with 5 minutes left to spare, as was their custom. Anko waited another 5 minutes before she saw that every team had made it on time and began her explanation with a snicker. Now you will experience why this place is called the Forest of Death. Naruto came back to attention and stared at her lazily. What was that? Sorry. People snickered and Anko smiled, hiding her true intentions. She pushed a kunai into her hand and hurled it at Naruto, who took it smack in the forehead, much to the chagrin of the others. However, Naruto poofed out of existence and the real Naruto appeared behind Anko. Did the clone really deserve a kunai to the head? He was just theorizing about the possibilities of a new jutsu. Shikamaru slapped his hand to his forehead. Mendoku-say. Choji smiled while the others stared wide-eyed at Naruto. Anko smiled. Not bad, Naruto. Naruto smiled and reappeared beside his two teammates. Anko reached into her coat and pulled out a stack of papers. Naruto looked at them. Consent forms. So we are allowed to kill in this test. Anko smiled and nodded. Everyone decided it would probably be a good idea to stay out of Naruto's way. There will be deaths in this test, guaranteed. I need you to sign these so I don't get the blame for your deaths. I hate paperwork, especially the ones for a death I'm responsible for. Anko passed the stack of forms to Naruto, who took one and passed it on. I will now begin the explanation for the second test of the Chunin exams. To sum it up, you will all go through an extreme survival match. First, I will explain the area's geographical features. Anko unrolled a scroll that had a map of the training area on it. The area is roughly 20 kilometers in diameter with 44 entrance gates spaced evenly around the side. The entire area consists of a thick forest. There is a river running roughly north to south with a tower at the center. The tower is about 10 kilometers from any gate. Once you are inside, you will be required to complete a mission. The mission directive is this: you will do anything necessary to fight for these scrolls. Anko pulled out a pair of scrolls. One scroll was white and marked with the heaven kanji, while the blue one was marked with the earth kanji. Anko continued explaining. There are several rules to this test. Rule 1. To successfully progress to the final test, you must obtain one heaven and one earth scroll and make it to the tower within the time limit. Rule 2. If you complete the first rule, but produce a missing or unrecoverable teammate, you fail. Rule 3. You are not allowed to open these scrolls until you have entered the tower. Rule 4. Once the test has begun, you will not be allowed to leave the forest until the end of the test. Rule 5. The time limit is 120 hours, or 5 days. Ino smirked at Choji. Worried about food, Choji smirked back at her. No, I have more than enough food to last me 7 days. Everyone who knew Choji's eating habits that were not on his team looked at him dubiously. A week of food for Choji consisted of junk food that most people would eat over the space of 5 or so years. There was no bulging pack of food. In fact, Choji had a single bag of chips in his hand and that was it, from what they could see. Anko restarted with her explanation. Once you and your team have signed the forms, you will hand 3 forms in for a single one of these scrolls, which will be chosen at random at that stand there. She pointed to a stand where 3 examiners were sitting. Anko looked back at them. You have 15 minutes to sign the forms. Once those 15 minutes is up, you will be assigned to a gate with your team and you will have a final 10 minutes to plan your strategies before the exam will commence. As a final piece of advice, don't die. 25 minutes later, Team 8 had signed the forms and handed them in as soon as they were allowed. They received the Earth Scroll and were directed to gate number 8. After a final 10 minutes of strategizing, the gates were open and they charged in, hoping to get this over and done with. Naruto extended his senses and tried to detect chakra signatures. He found a non-familiar group not too far away and Naruto made a hand signal in the target team's direction. They changed course and jumped up into the trees, making a beeline for the team. Once they were about 50 meters away, Naruto saw that they were a team from Suna. Luckily, it was not Gaara's team. The team seemed to be arguing over something and they pulled out their scroll, which was luckily the Heaven Scroll. Naruto had an idea as he pulled out a spare scroll and used a very discreet Kawarimi no Jutsu to replace the scroll they were stupidly waving about with a very similar scroll, and they made their way towards the tower with the Suna team none the wiser. At the command center in the tower, Anko had just gotten to the tower in the 3 hours since the exam started when an examiner rushed out the door to greet her. Anko-san, a team has already passed. Anko looked at the man skeptically. The previous record was around 5 hours, yet he was claiming that a team had finished in fewer than 3. The man saw the look and explained. It was Team 8 of Konoha, Anko-san. Team captain was Uzumaki Naruto. They're just entering the tower now. Anko sighed. She should have guessed. She walked into the control hub of the tower and saw from the security camera in the room that indeed, Uzumaki Naruto and Team 8 were just entering the tower, completely unscathed. With Team 8, Naruto pushed open the door and broke the paper seal holding it shut. They walked into the room and saw a quote written on the wall. Naruto recognized it vaguely as a quote from one of the Hokages. Looking at the scrolls, he gave one to Shikamaru and they both opened them, revealing summoning scrolls. Naruto saw the main symbol on the scrolls form a lump and smoke began emitting from it like a miniature volcano. Naruto nodded at Shikamaru and they threw them to the floor where a cloud of smoke appeared. Naruto smiled as he felt the familiar chakra signature. It's been a while, Iruka-sensei. The smoke cleared to indeed reveal it was Iruka. Iruka looked rather startled to be summoned so early, and even more startled to see that Team 8 was completely unscratched. Hey Naruto. It's good to see that you guys made it. You've smashed the previous record by several hours. I doubted Kurenai when she accepted the mission to the wave, but now I can see why. Naruto, you make an excellent commander. I have little doubt that you will become Chunin. Naruto smiled as he looked up at the wall. Iruka-sensei, I remember that quote from somewhere, but it's broken. Iruka smiled. That was my other mission. Each team that passes will be greeted by a Chunin, congratulated and then told the meaning of the quote. Read it. It's the quote Sandaime-sama thought you should keep in mind for this exam and as a Chunin. The heaven in this quote indicates the head of a person. The earth indicates the body. If you do not possess heaven, gain knowledge and be prepared. If you do not possess earth, run through the fields and seek strength. For example, let's say Choji's weakness was his brain, he should study every day. Choji smiled sheepishly and chuckled at the good-natured joke. If Shikamaru's weakness was his body, he should train himself every day. Shikamaru sighed. Mendokusei. And if you possess both qualities like Naruto, dangerous missions will become safe ones, possibly even easy. Naruto smiled lazily at the compliment. Iruka held up a finger and closed his eyes. A Chunin is a commander-class ninja who is responsible for his teammates' lives and successful completion of the mission. Remember this principle and go forward. I'm proud of you 3. Congratulations. Naruto smiled as they chatted for a bit longer before Iruka puffed out of existence, leaving Team 8 to explore the tower. They found a room not far away that had 3 futons as well as some other things. They left it and proceeded to the central part of the tower, finding a wide open space with a giant statue of a pair of arms and hands that were forming the ram seal. Naruto decided to sit down here and work on some things for the upcoming 3rd exam, while Choji and Shikamaru sat down next to him. Choji pulled out his food scroll and used a bit of chakra to pull a large shopping bag full of packets of chips out. He opened one packet and began eating, sharing chips with both Naruto and Shikamaru. Naruto pulled out his own scroll that held the mass number of trench knives to see that they were still firmly held in stasis. An hour of chatting and eating later, Naruto became aware of 3 chakra signatures at the entrance of the room. Naruto turned to see Gaara's team, completely unscathed. Naruto raised a hand lazily in greeting. Yo. Good to see you made it. Gaara nodded and led his team out, going somewhere else in the tower. Naruto looked at the scroll that had his trench knives sealed into it and decided to try and replicate it. Opening his utilities scroll, Naruto pulled another green-colored scroll out of the scroll as well as a calligraphy brush and a bottle of ink. Naruto looked carefully at the real scroll and began painting it to make a mirror copy. Both Shikamaru and Choji looked on in interest as about 15 minutes later, Naruto finished, admiring his handiwork. Naruto pulled out his real trench knives from their hidden location in his sleeves and formed a ram seal, focusing a huge amount of chakra before there was a huge puff of smoke and Choji and Shikamaru's eyes widened in disbelief. Naruto had made 64 copies of the right-hand knife. They both reached out and touched them to see that they were all indeed real. Naruto looked at them and picked up one of the knives before doing 2 hand seals to seal the weapon clone inside the scroll. About 10 minutes later, Naruto sealed the last one inside the scroll and rolled it back up, tying it up with string. Naruto noticed the look on their faces and smiled. It's a new jutsu I invented. I knew that while something is sealed, it is essentially in stasis. I know how to perform the Shuriken Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, and creating the knives is only slightly more difficult than Shuriken. I put 2 and 2 together and tried sealing the weapon clones inside the scroll for later use. I don't need to maintain concentration to keep them active until I resummon them. Choji and Shikamaru nodded slowly. Naruto put a finger to his chin in a pose that they recognized as thoughtfulness. I still haven't made a name for this jutsu yet. After throwing some names around, they decided to leave it for later and they got back to practicing, eating and studying. End of the 5th day. The other teams that had arrived had trickled in and every one of the Konoha rookie teams had made it. The team from Odo had as well. There was also Kabuto's team. No surprises there. At the end of the time limit, they were assembled in the main hall. All of the Junin instructors from the Konoha teams except Kabuto's team, as well as all of the main examiners for the 3 tests in the Hokage were present. Anko looked at them. Alright, line up in your teams, we have an announcement to make. First of all, congratulations on passing the 2nd test. We will now have an explanation on the 3rd exam from Hokage-sama. Everyone listen well. The Hokage stepped forward, cleared his throat and began. The 3rd exam will begin, however, before that, there is something that I want to make clear to all of you. Several people in the room knew what was coming next. Kabuto's team were some of them. Naruto had a fair idea, but he kept his mouth shut. It's about the true purpose of the exam. Why we do a joint exam with the allied nations. Naruto knew exactly where this was going now. To maintain good relations with the allied nations and to heighten the level of the ninja. Do not let those reasons deceive you. This exam, so to speak, is really just a replacement for war. A lot of the genin gasped. Tenten asked the question nearly everyone wanted to. What do you mean? If we go back into the pages of history, the current allied nations now were in fact bitter enemies, fighting for the right to rule. To avoid the massive waste of military power that is the result of war, they agreed to localize the fighting to one area. This was the beginning of the Chunin selection exams. Ino still didn't understand. What? So this isn't for Chunin promotions. This exam is indeed examine those who are worthy of the Chunin title. But on the other hand, it is also a place where ninja fight and carry their country's dignity. In the 3rd exam, feudal lords and famous people from varying countries who may be potential clients are invited here as guests. Feudal lords from countries with hidden villages and ninja leaders will see your battles. If there is a significant difference in power, the strong country will be flooded with jobs. If a country is seen as weak, their jobs will decrease, and at the same time, countries are able to show how their village has grown, and possess excellent military power to the adjacent countries. In other words, they can put foreign pressure on them. Kiba obviously still didn't get it, and proved it by questioning the Hokage further. So why do we have to fight with the risk of losing our lives? Naruto looked lazily at Kiba before turning back to the old man. He answered him. A county's power is the village's power. The village's power is the shinobi's power, and a shinobi's true power is only manifested in life or death situations. How true that is. He tuned back into the Hokage's speech. This exam is also a place to show off the ninja power of one's country. Since this is an exam where you fight with your lives on the line, it has a meaning, and your predecessors have fought and dreamed of being in the Chunin exam because of it. Apparently, no one had any more questions. However, Gaara was obviously impatient. I don't care. Tell us the details of this life or death exam. The Hokage nodded. Then I will begin explaining the details of the third test, but... The Hokage was interrupted by a Junin who appeared in front of him. Excuse me, Hokage-sama. I, Gecko Hayate, the judge, will explain. Please do. Hayate slowly stood up, not turning to face them. It's nice to meet you, everyone. Before the third test, there's something I want you to do. Fight in some preliminary matches to see who gets to progress to the main matches. Most of the genin started murmuring to each other. Sakura wanted a further explanation. Sensei, I don't understand. Why can't we just progress to the main matches with the remaining examinees? Hayate coughed again, and looked over them. It may have been that the exams were too easy this year, or you're all exceptional genins. However, there are far too many of you left. The time of the feudal lords and other important people is precious, and we cannot afford to waste it with endless battles. Therefore, only 10 or less people are allowed to enter the main matches. According to the Chunin exam regulations, we are required to hold preliminaries to decrease it to a suitable number. We are also limited on time, so those who do not feel well and wish to quit, please raise your hand now. You can do so without hurting your team, as from now on, it will be one-on-one matches. The preliminaries will begin immediately. Would anyone like to quit? Sasuke grabbed his neck, which Naruto noticed as he felt a distinctly evil pulse of chakra coming from Sasuke. Sasuke-kun. Naruto saw that Sakura was worried about something. Sasuke-kun, you should withdraw from the preliminary matches. Both Naruto's and Sasuke's eyes widened at this. Sakura pressed on. You've been acting weird since that Orochimaru guy beat you. The bruise hurt even now, right? Please. Please stop. I'm afraid. Anko, Ibiki and the Hokage began discussing what they should do with the boy. The suggestion of forcing him out of the matches and surrounding them with Anbu escort in isolation came up when Kakashi butted in. He's not the sort that will listen to you that easily. He has a background that gives him a stubborn will to try his hardest, after all. Anko got pissed off and started chewing Kakashi out for his lack of seriousness at the situation. Stop fooling around. I'll make him quit, even if I have to use force. The cursed seal reacts when you try to mold chakra, and it will try and extract power from him. It's a forbidden jutsu that undermines the affected person. It amazes me that he's able to withstand it. A normal person would be dead. Anko turned to the Hokage. Hokage-sama. Sakura still hadn't let up trying to make him quit. You aren't in any condition to fight. You should just. Sasuke turned to her, glaring at her despite the pain. Shut up. I knew it. Sasuke whispered to her. Just be quiet. Sakura couldn't take the hint. You've been bearing this pain the whole time. Sasuke tried to make her see the point. Sakura, learn when to take a hint and shut it. Sakura still didn't get it, and decided to go to the next level. Whatever you say, I'm still going to tell the teachers about it. Sakura started raising her hand, but she stopped when she saw Kabuto had already raised his own. The Hokage looked at him. What is it? I quit. Everyone stared at him and Hayate flipped through the clipboard's paper, stopping at a certain page. Your Konoha's Yakushi Kabuto, right? Okay, you can leave. Kabuto turned around and walked through the lines towards the door. As he walked out the back of the group of genin, Naruto stopped him with a lazy stare. Kabuto, why are you quitting? Kabuto turned around and smiled at him. I'm sorry, Naruto-kun, but I'm exhausted of chakra. I'd rather quit now while I'm still in one piece than face off against someone and be taken out of here on a stretcher. Naruto glared at him. Your chakra levels are full. Your lying may convince the others, but I know a traitor when I see one. Everyone stopped and looked at Naruto, who was accusing one of his fellow comrades of treason. First, you had a staggering amount of information on my background and abilities, which besides 4 of the people up there, only I should know about. Not even the Hokage knows the full extent of my abilities. You would have even broken the law and revealed an S-class secret to a bunch of genin who, even if they were all from Konoha, would not be permitted to know it until they reached Junin. An act which is punishable by death. You knew more about Rock Lee than anyone else except his team and myself. Your chakra capacity is massive, beyond even mine. You said your chakra was drained, yet I can feel it's still at basically full strength. And also, while you're at it, get rid of that genjutsu on your forehead protector. I am within my legal rights to end your life right now. Kabuto's eyes widened as he smiled sadly. You are indeed observant, Naruto-kun. Ibiki's eyes narrowed as he snapped his fingers and Kabuto and his teammates were surrounded by 3 squads of Anbu. Ibiki nodded at them and the squads took hold of Kabuto and his 2 teammates, disappearing. Everyone was silent for quite some time, trying to figure out exactly what had just happened. Naruto looked up at the Hokage. Old man, I want to know more about that boy. The fact that he knew was incredibly disturbing. With a cough, Hayate caught their attention. Hayate pointed to one of the panels on the back wall. Said panel slid up to reveal a display screen. Then, let's start the preliminaries. It will consist of one-on-one matches. In other words, it will be like real combat. Now that we have exactly 18 people, we will have 9 matches. The winners will be able to progress to the 3rd test. There are no rules for engaging in combat and you will fight them until they die, are knocked out or admit defeat. However, if I decide the match is over, you will stop immediately. The electric bulletin board will choose 2 names at random from the participants. Without further ado, I will start the selection for the first match. The screen flashed yellow before the names of the remaining contestants began cycling through, settling on the first pair. Uzumaki Naruto vs Sabaku no Tamari. Naruto sighed. Right off the bat, huh? Hayate coughed and looked at the 2 people. Would the 2 participants step forward please? Both of them separated from their teams and stood face to face. First match is between Uzumaki Naruto and Sabaku no Tamari. Are there any objections to the participants? No one spoke, so Hayate coughed. Then would you please proceed to the stands with your Junin senseis and wait for your turn to start. Once everyone had left the field except Tamari, Naruto and Hayate, he coughed again. First match. Hajime. Tamari jumped back and eyed Naruto carefully. Naruto smiled at her. Judging by that battle fan you have, you're one of the few wind users of Suna. Tamari's eyes widened as Naruto took out a scroll, opened it and began reading. Tamari's sweat dropped. What are you doing? Naruto didn't look up. I'm thinking about the possibilities of a new jutsu. If I was to put a modified seal on. A vein on Tamari's forehead was pulsing before she took out her fan and let a massive gust of wind fly. When the blast hit the wall Naruto was in front of, the wall crumbled and gave off a huge cloud of dust. When it cleared, Naruto was gone. Tamari smirked. If you don't take me seriously, this is what happens. Naruto was still looking at the scroll from behind her. You know, for a wind user, your skill with wind isn't all that great. Tamari whipped around and let off another gust at point-blank range, only to see Naruto in his original position. Naruto rolled the scroll up and put it away, pulling out two other scrolls. A green and a black one. Shikamaru and Choji's eyes widened at this, as did everyone else's. Naruto smiled at his opponent. Naruto focused some chakra and said a single word. Kai. Team 8 and Team Guy's eyes widened even further. Whatever Naruto was going to do would require a great deal of speed. I think it's time I tried this new jutsu. However, I need to think of a name for it. Naruto closed his eyes before opening them several seconds later, smiling. Naruto stood both scrolls upright and got into a crouching stance. Ninpu Kuchiyos. Huaku Niju Hachi Kage Kase no Yaiba. Everyone's eyes widened at the name. Kurenai stared at Naruto in disbelief. Ninja Summoning Art. 128 Shadow Blades of Wind. The area around Naruto exploded into a small cloud of white smoke from which 9 swirling trails spiraled around. A few seconds later, a pair of smoke pillars shot upwards, one green and the other black. They wrapped themselves around each other before the smoke dispersed, revealing the green and black scrolls. Naruto jumped up in between them and began using gliding motions with his hands to get the first 2 knives out of the scroll. He poured a huge amount of chakra into them and smiled at Temari. 2 blades. Naruto hurled the blades at Temari, who dodged them, and everyone's eyes bludged as they impacted the ground and went through it, completely disappearing from view, leaving nothing but a slit in the ground where they had impacted. The other wind users in the room, namely Baki, Temari, Asuma and the Hokage, realized that these blades were still made of metal, but it was a metal heavily influenced by the wind property. Naruto smiled and procured the next 2. 4 blades. Naruto hurled the blades at her and Temari again dodged. Naruto continued smiling. 8 blades. Naruto got 2 blades, pumped a huge amount of chakra into them, threw them, and then did the same with 2 more. Temari dodged them and stared at Naruto, who kept smiling. 16 blades. Temari's eyes widened. He was increasing the number of blades with each round using a Fibonacci-like method, and there were apparently 128 in total. She wouldn't be able to dodge for much longer. The 8 knives flew at her as she just managed to dodge them. For the next one, she had no choice but to block or deflect them. 32 blades. Naruto's speed was increasing dramatically as the latest salvo came at Temari. By now, Naruto was rotating his body so fast to get the knives that the chakra blades left a trail around him that to Neji and Hinata looked disturbingly like the Kaden. Temari let forth a gust of wind to try and block the knives, and when the knives hit the wind, they kept going for a while before they puffed into smoke. All Junin's eyes in the room widened even further, if it was possible. These knives were Kage Bunshin's. Even Naruto could not make the clones this quickly. He was actually summoning them from the scroll. Naruto kept smiling. 64 blades. Temari was scared out of her wits. Even her best wind attack would not be able to defeat the number of knives remaining. Naruto turned into a blur as he ripped the weapons from the scroll, forced chakra into them, and hurled the volley at Temari. Temari let forth another gust of wind, destroying the blades and covering the area between her and Naruto with a smoke screen. The amount of chakra she had to put into these gusts was ridiculous. Temari heard Naruto's call of the next and final volley. 128 blades. Temari didn't have time to react as the blades ripped through the smoke and she closed her eyes and waited for the end. When it didn't come, she opened her eyes slowly to see 64 knives hovering in front of her. Naruto dropped back to the ground with the scrolls piling around him, smiling cheesily at her. If I wanted, I could have killed you by letting those knives travel for another fraction of a second. There is no blade in the world stronger than a blade of wind. True blades of wind cannot be stopped by anything. The fact that all of those knives were Kage Bunshin's and they still lasted as long as they did against your wind attacks is surprising. Sorry, Temari-san, but you lose this one. Hayate pointed to Naruto. Shosha. Uzumaki Naruto. Choji pumped his fist into the air and cheered while everyone else was trying to pick their mouths off the ground. Naruto narrowed his eyes as the knives hovering in front of Tamari poofed out of existence. Naruto shook his head. I can't believe how much chakra that took. I'll have to make this a novelty jutsu. Everyone's eyes practically popped out of their head. He was making something like this a novelty jutsu. Naruto rolled the scrolls up and walked up the stairs, stopping behind Team Guy, or more specifically, Neji and Tenten. Since I trained with your team, seeing you use the Hake Rokuju Yansho and Soshoryu gave me the idea for the manifestation of that jutsu. Thanks, guys. Neji and Tenten nodded dumbly as Lee's eyes caught fire. Your overflowing youth is an example to us all, Naruto-kun. Naruto smiled. Thanks, Lee. Naruto made his way over to his team where Choji offered him a bag of chips, which Naruto accepted gratefully while Shikamaru smiled at Naruto. Kurenai was smiling widely at her student as she placed a hand on his shoulder, which Naruto noticed. That was great, Naruto. How did you come up with that jutsu? Well, I knew that sealing scrolls can be used to put things in stasis, so I theorized that if I was able to put shadow clones of items into them, the same should hold true for weapons. Then it was a matter of actually trying it out. It seems to work a little too well. Few of the genin here would have enough chakra to even use it, which is why I'm making it a novelty jutsu. It requires a lot of work before I can even use it, as the enemy won't just sit and watch me create 128 knives and seal them one at a time into the scroll. Kurenai smiled at Naruto as he turned back to the others to see that everyone's eyes were still on him. Naruto looked lazily at Hayate. Hayate-san, are you going to announce the next match? Hayate coughed and the bulletin board began cycling through the names. Akamichi Choji vs Uchiha Sasuke. Choji smiled as he started shoveling in chips by the handful. Sakura stared at him. Why is he eating chips at a time like this? Naruto looked at her lazily. You'll see. Sasuke was about to be schooled. Naruto thought about which way Choji was going to flatten the Uchiha. As Choji finished the bag, he ran down the stairs following Sasuke and they stood face to face. Once Hayate made sure they were ready, he brought his hand down between them and jumped back. Second match. Hajime. Both Ino and Sakura started cheering for their teammate. Choji smiled as he pulled out his weapon scroll. Naruto's not the only one who's been learning new jutsus. Choji put his palm to a particular pair of symbols to reveal a mass of kunai that were threaded through a pair of wires by the pommel. Choji wrapped the wires around his chest and smiled. Naruto smirked. Inventive. Very clever. Everyone around Naruto looked at him waiting for an explanation. Watch. Choji put both arms in front of him and started with a clan jutsu. Baika no jutsu. Choji's size increased dramatically and the kunai stretched around Choji. Naruto had a fair idea of what was coming next. Choji drew his arms, legs and head into the body, letting out plumes of chakra as he announced his combo jutsu. Nikuden Hari Sensha. Naruto smiled as Choji started spinning rapidly, rolling forward far faster than ever before. Naruto had been right. As I thought. Choji used the kunai to improve his family jutsu, dramatically increasing not only his destructive power, but also his speed and maneuverability. They looked back to see Choji rolling all over the field, chanting his usual mantra. Roll, 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 roll. Sasuke was dodging the rolling ball of green, not entirely sure about what to make of it. He gave himself some distance and thought about how to attack it. He could not use chakra, therefore no jutsus or sharingan. He took out a kunai and threw it at Choji, watching in dismay as it shattered on impact. If that's what it did to metal, there was absolutely no chance in hell he was going to try physically attacking it. He was pretty sure even if he managed to stop the rotation, punching him would be like punching the wall of a padded room. He'd just bounce right back. He just had to wait until Choji wore himself out. However, Naruto knew something Sasuke was forgetting. Akamichis do not tire easily. Choji was no exception. Naruto sighed. Sasuke's had it. If he could, he would have used jutsus by now or the Sharingan, but he hasn't. There is no way Sasuke can win this unless Choji gives up. And trust me, Choji will not. Shikamaru agreed with Naruto's assessment. Back in the arena, Sasuke seized up and Naruto detected a slight spike of a very disturbing chakra signature coming from Sasuke. Choji didn't stop and rolled into him, slicing Sasuke severely before Sasuke managed to half limp, half jump to the side and collapsed, panting heavily as people saw strange markings work their way over his body. The markings withdrew, but Sasuke did not get back up. After coming to a stop and returning to his normal size, Choji awaited the outcome of the match. Hayate coughed. Shosha. Akamichi Choji. Choji was extremely pleased with himself as he ran back up to his teammates. Shikamaru patted him on the back and Naruto pulled out his food scroll and brought forth a packet of chips, which he handed to Choji. Choji smiled and took them, ripping into them. Both Sakura and Ino were gobsmacked that their precious Sasuke-kun had been defeated. Kakashi looked at them. Sasuke was unable to use any chakra. Choji was the worst possible opponent he could face with that handicap. Kakashi reappeared in a poof beside Sasuke just as the medical nins were about to pick him up. This is out of your league. I'll handle this, and then you can heal him. The medic nins nodded, as Kakashi poofed with Sasuke into another room. Hayate coughed, catching everyone's attention. The scoreboard started cycling through the names again before landing on a rather interesting matchup. Haruno Sakura vs Yamanaka Ino. Both girls stiffened before they looked at each other and proceeded down to the ground. 15 minutes later, both Ino and Sakura charged each other, using the last of their strength to land a final blow. Both girls landed the punch to the other's head, sending the other flying back. They struggled to glare at each other one last time before they both passed out. Hayate surveyed both girls closely before straightening up. Both competitors are unable to continue, meaning it's a double knockout. No one from the third match will progress to the third test. Kakashi reappeared and picked up both girls before reappearing next to the Konoha rookies, placing them in a sitting position against the wall. Hayate coughed, and the screen began cycling through names again. It settled for a pair that could only be described as fate. Hyuga Hinata vs Hyuga Neji. Hinata's eyes widened and fear started pouring off her in waves. She slowly walked down as did Neji. Neji smirked. Hinata-sama, you should forfeit. The moment I was chosen as your opponent, fate. Neji didn't get to finish the sentence as Naruto looked at him, calling out to him. Neji, don't start with that fate stuff again. Remember what I told you. Everyone looked at Naruto. Neji's eyes narrowed at the memory. Flashback. Lee had challenged Neji to yet another duel, with Naruto refereeing the match. The match was over in a flash, and Neji smirked. No matter how good you are, Lee, you will always lose to me. Fate has decided that long ago. Lee looked up at Neji from his position on the ground. Fate. What does fate have to do with anything? Neji launched into an all too familiar speech. Your talent is determined when you are born. In other words, everything is predetermined at birth. Lee glared at Neji. Why do you always label everything like that? Neji smirked. Are you saying that anyone can become a genius if they try hard enough? Lee's eyes widened as Neji continued with his speech. Only a few will ever be geniuses. Look at reality closely. Those who are geniuses are born with that fate. It's not something that you can become because you want to. It's already determined by fate. People are different. They can only live in the indisputable flow of life. But there is just one fate that everyone possesses, and that is death. Lee's spirit had been almost broken when Naruto interrupted. Neji, do you believe that? Neji turned to Naruto as Naruto explained himself. If a single man hadn't saved me on my 4th birthday, even if I had survived, I wouldn't be a genius, as you call them, now. I would have been the Dobe of the academy instead of the Rookie of the Year. I would have lived my life shunned by everyone. Neji smirked as he closed his eyes. Fate intervened on your 4th birthday. Naruto nodded. It did. It dictated I would die at the age of 4. Both Neji and Lee looked at Naruto shocked as he explained. For the first 3 birthdays of my life, the Hokage saved me from death. However, on my 4th birthday, fate determined that I would die. The Hokage did not show up after I was cornered and beaten to near death. The only reason I survived was that another boy proved to me that this was not normal, that I had the ability to change the direction my life was taking. If he had not intervened, I would never have been able to learn from the best Junin specialists in the village. Neji, it is true that people share one fate. The fate of death. However, apart from stating that we will all die, fate has no control over us. It does not even dictate when we will die. To a large extent, the person will dictate when they will die. If they let their guard down during a battle which an enemy takes advantage of and kills them, if they have an accident that results in death, if they commit a grievous crime and are sentenced to death, they decided their own way to die, even if it was unconsciously, or in the case of the last example, willingly. Neji, fate is not something that even the gods can control, let alone mortals like us. You can either choose to live life the way others want you to, or you can make your own path in life. You may end up in exactly the same place, but the important thing is that you controlled the way you got there. Both Neji and Lee were shocked speechless at this, as were Guy and Tenten who had overheard it. Neji after several weeks had slowly started to let go of his beliefs in fate, although when it came to the head family, it was impossible, even for Naruto to stop him. End flashback. Neji smirked as he turned back to Hinata. I will give you a choice. Do you wish to fight me, or do you wish to back down? I will accept either. Hinata's fear slowly subsided as she closed her eyes, gathering her resolve. She opened her eyes, which were now full of determination. I will fight. Neji nodded and got into his Juken stance, as did Hinata. Naruto noticed interestingly enough that even with the Hyuga's trademark taijutsu stance, there seemed to be slight variations in the stance between members of the main and branch houses. Apart from the fact that Hinata was less experienced than Neji, which her stance showed, the overall posture was slightly different. He would be able to tell when they engaged in battle. Hayate brought his hand down. 6th match, Hajime. He jumped back as both Hyuga charged in, trading blows. Sakura was fascinated by the style. It looks like they're palming each other. Naruto nodded. They are. However, the Hyuga's style of taijutsu, known as the Juken, will do more damage if used correctly than even my stance will. The stance was created to bring out the full potential of the Hyuga Kek Genkai, the Byakugan. Like the Sharingan, it can see chakra, however, unlike the Sharingan, the Byakugan gives them not only an extended nearly 360-degree view of their surroundings, but it allows them to see the opponent's chakra system. The theory behind the Juken is simple enough. If you manage to hit one of the tenketsu of the chakra system accurately, you can control their chakra flow as you wish. People may be able to strengthen their bones and muscles, but they will never be able to strengthen their inner organs. The Juken is able to kill a person in one hit if they hit one of the major tenketsu around the person's major organs. Even a glancing blow from the Juken is enough to kill you. Everyone listened to Naruto's explanation while watching the fight. Both of them went in for a blow, both getting hits on the opponent and stopping. After a few seconds, Hinata coughed up blood. Neji pulled back the sleeve of her jacket, revealing why Hinata's attack had done nothing. He had sealed the tenketsu on her arms, disabling her use of the Juken. Hinata looked at her arm. All this time you were correct, Hinata-sama. I know how dangerous the Juken is, so I stopped you from using it for this fight. Hinata sighed. She could go on with the fight, using regular academy taijutsu, but it would be pointless, as all Hyugas who went to the academy only learnt the bare basics of regular taijutsu. She raised her free hand. I forfeit. Neji let go of Hinata as Hayate announced the winner. Shosha. Hyuga Neji. Hinata despondently walked back up to her teammates, who consoled her while Neji returned to Team Guy. Neji nodded to Naruto. Thank you for reminding me. I almost lost myself again. Naruto smiled lazily. No problem. Hayate coughed and the board began cycling through names. Naruto was starting to wonder if the board was voice activated by Hayate's cough. The next matchup was decided. Nara Shikamaru vs Kintsuchi. Shikamaru sighed. Mendokusei. I have to fight a girl. Naruto smiled as his teammate made his way to the arena, as did the Kunoichi from the Odo team. Hayate brought his hand down and started the match. Several minutes later, Shikamaru had looked to be in a bad position, but Naruto had seen his sneaky use of the Kujimane no Jutsu pretending to be the shadows of the strings and captured her, forcing her to slam her head into the wall behind her, knocking her unconscious. Hayate announced the winner. Shosha. Nara Shikamaru. Naruto welcomed his teammate back with a smile, exchanging a few words with his team before Hayate coughed and the board activated. Naruto was sure of it now. That board's voiced activated to his cough. Choji snickered while Shikamaru smiled. Since there were few people left, the board seemed to reach its decision quicker with each passing match. Dosu Kinuta vs Rock Lee. Rock Lee smiled. This is exactly what was hoping for. A chance to show everyone what he was capable of. Naruto smiled at the energetic boy next to him. See if you can finish him in one move, Lee. Lee gave a thumbs up and jumped over the railing while Dosu walked down, smiling at the boy. Obviously they had met before. Lee spoke first. This time the outcome will be different. Dosu smirked as Hayate brought his hand down. Sixth match. Hajime. Lee undid his bandages, much to the horror of Dosu, but before Dosu could give up, he was kicked into the air with Lee appearing behind him. Lee's bandages wrapped around him and Lee slammed him into the ground. Omid Renge. The ground cracked underneath the impact as everyone except Team Guy and Naruto looked gobsmacked at the amount of damage that single move had done. Lee landed gracefully at the side of the crater, panting. No teammate to save you this time. The only reason you beat me last time is because it was 3-on-1. 1-on-1, I proved my taijutsu makes me just as capable as you are with your ninjutsu and genjutsu. Hayate pointed to Lee. Shosha. Rock Lee. Lee disappeared and reappeared up with his teammates. Naruto, Guy, Choji and Shikamaru congratulated him as Hayate coughed, setting the scoreboard of again. Inuzuka Kiba vs Sabaku no Kankuro. Kiba jumped down to the arena while Kankuro walked down, a smug look on his face. Once both fighters stepped up and Hayate announced the match. Seventh match. Hajime. Hayate jumped back as Kiba smirked. I don't know what you are, but you're not human. The thing on your back is though. The Suna team looked startled as Kiba rubbed a finger under his nose. Never underestimate an Inuzuka's smell. My sense of smell is 1,000 times better than any other person in this room. Akamaru. Mashoka. Akamaru barked an affirmative and Kiba formed a ram seal, letting off chakra. Gijyu Ninpu. Shikyaku no Jutsu. Kiba's finger nails grew and formed rather wicked-looking claws. Kiba smiled ferally at the opponent. Akamaru. The dog jumped onto his back and barked. Gijyu Ninpu. Jujin Bunshin. Akamaru was surrounded by a cloud of smoke which cleared to reveal an exact copy of Kiba. Both of them growled as they observed their prey. Let's go, Akamaru. They separated and disappeared in a burst of speed. When they reappeared, both of them were going not for the apparent opponent, but the one strapped to its back. However, Kankuro dodged as he narrowed his eyes. He was at a major disadvantage here. He used puppets to engage in medium to long-range battle which left the user vulnerable. It seemed this guy relied on speed and power to deliver savage blows to the opponent. He had to think and fast. Getting some chakra strings, he threw them at one of them, making him stop in his tracks. The other one stopped and looked at his companion. Akamaru. Deijobu. Akamaru gave several grunts before Kiba sighed. That may hold him now, but you're going to give me Akamaru back. Kiba reached into his pouch and pulled out 2 small brown pills. He ate one himself and flicked one at the Akamaru clone, who caught it and swallowed it in the same movement. The clone growled as chakra began surging off him. He broke free of the chakra strings and smiled at Kankuro. Kiba hunched over, a large purple ball in his hand. Let's try that new one, Akamaru. Let's go. Kiba hurled the smoke bomb at Kankuro and announced his jutsu. Gatsuga. Both of them turned into gray cyclones as they ripped into the smoke cloud, causing general destruction. Once the smoke cleared, the puppet was lying on the ground in tatters and the real Kankuro was on the ground, trying desperately to get up, but couldn't and fell to the ground. Kiba smiled. Nice work, Akamaru. Akamaru grunted and turned back into his regular form. Hayate announced the winner. Shosha. Inuzuka Kiba. Once Kiba got back up to the group, he received praise while Kankuro was carted off along with his puppet so the next match could begin. Hayate coughed and the board scrolled through the last few names and in just over 2 seconds had chosen a pair. Aburame Shino vs Tenten. Both fighters came down and faced off, not saying a word. Hayate made sure they were both ready. He gave the word to begin. 8th match. Hajime. Tenten jumped back and jumped into the air, launching several weapons at Shino, who tried to jump out of the way, but the weapons struck true. Shino began falling to the ground until he burst into a group of bugs. Naruto smiled. Mushi Bunshin no Jutsu. Tenten looked around her and saw Shino behind her near the wall. She turned around, smiling at him before pulling out several weapons. Shino looked up at her. I would advise you to check your surroundings. Tenten looked around before she saw an entire army of bugs crawling at her from the opposite direction. Shino looked at her. Those are Kikai bugs. They will consume your chakra, rendering you unable to fight. If you attack me, the bugs will eat your chakra. If you go for them, I will attack you. What will you do? Tenten weighed her options. She really didn't want to have to use this jutsu yet, but it seemed like she had no choice. She reached into her ninja pouch and pulled out a pair of red scrolls. She placed them on the ground. I'll show you where Naruto got his inspiration from. Shino raised an eyebrow as Tenten formed a short set of hand seals before announcing her jutsu. Soshoryu. The arena exploded in smoke as a pair of dragons rose up through the air, majestically entwining before meeting near the roof of the arena. Tenten jumped up to the top and began palming the scrolls, obtaining weapons of every shape and size imaginable and hurled them at Shino. Shino formed several hand seals of his own, holding his hands out in front of him. Mushi Kame no Jutsu. Bugs flew out from Shino's jacket sleeves and surrounded him with what seemed to be a black version of the Kaden. The weapons struck it and bounced off, falling to the ground. When Shino sensed the weapons stop, he withdrew his bugs, seeing Tenten land on the ground. I'm not done yet. Tenten jumped up and pulled the weapons back to her via ninja wire and then flung them back at Shino, who again used the Mushi Kame. When Tenten landed, Shino appeared behind her with a kunai to her neck. Interesting jutsu, however, this is checkmate. My bugs are far too close for you to try anything else and I have you in a submissive position. Tenten may be prideful, however, she knew when she was beaten. True. I give up. Shino relaxed and called his bugs back to him. Shosha. Aburame Shino. Both Shino and Tenten walked back up to their teams, getting nods of acknowledgement or a few words of praise. Hayate coughed, catching their attention. Could the fighters for the 9th and final match please step up? Gaara used Shushin no Jutsu to get down to the arena while Zaku jumped down. They stood facing each other, waiting for the word. Hayate brought his hand down and jumped back. 9th and final match. Hajime. Zaku smirked as he brought his one useful arm up. This will be enough to beat you. Gaara made no movements, so Zaku announced his jutsu. Zenkaha. The air blasted out of the hole in his hand and a huge cloud of dust washed over the part of the arena Gaara was in. Ha! Blew him to bits. Zaku was shocked when the dust cleared to reveal Gaara had not moved an inch, nor was he harmed. Zaku froze in fear while Gaara looked at him. Is that it? There isn't enough blood. Gaara sent a wave of sand at Zaku, who tried to dodge but the sand caught him and wrapped him up in a cocoon. Sabaku Q. Shino, Kiba and Hinata knew what was coming next. They had observed Gaara use this combo on some hapless rain nin, which ended up in the ninja having his internals splattered all over the clearing. Before anyone could stop him, Gaara completed the jutsu. Sabaku Soso. Zaku gave one last scream as he was crushed by a huge amount of pressure, much to everyone's horror. The sand retreated back to his gourd, as Hayate announced the winner. He had said killing was permitted, but he never expected someone to do it and so heartlessly. Shosha. Gaara. Gaara warped back up to his teammates as Hayate called the winners down. Could the 8 people who earned the right to progress to the final test please come down? We will now announce the rules and date of the final test. All 8 of them came down and stood in a line in front of the assembled Chunins, Junins and the Hokage, who after a puff from his pipe got things going. Firstly, congratulations on earning the right to compete in the exams. Your main matches will be held in front of a large number of very powerful and influential people, as well as everyone else who wishes to attend, ninja and civilians alike. We wish for all of you to show off your true potential as your country's representative power. Therefore, to allow the important people to arrive here and also to give you time to train, the main matches will be held in exactly 1 month from today. Use this time to analyze what you've found out about your opponents from the preliminaries, and prepare for it. These preliminaries were conducted like real-life confrontations. You knew nothing of the others. But the main matches will not be like that. There are those who have revealed everything to their rivals, and then there are those who have revealed little. This is also the reason the matches are not beginning right away. To make things fair, train hard and improve yourselves over the next month. Before I let you go, I need each of you to take a piece of paper from the box Anko is holding. Take only one. Anko stepped forward with a box in her hand. I'll come to each of you, so don't worry. Anko went down the line, starting with Gaara, and finishing with Neji. Once Neji had picked a piece of paper, Anko looked at them. I need each of you to tell me what number you got. Starting with you. She looked at Gaara. Gaara. 7. Kiba. 2. Choji. 4. Shikamaru. 3. Naruto. 1. Shino. 6. Lee. 8. Neji. 5. Ibiki had been scribbling on a clipboard, and when Neji called out his number, he stopped and turned it around so they could see what he was writing. These are the match-ups for the main tournament. Round 1. Uzumaki Naruto vs Inuzuka Kiba. Nara Shikamaru vs Akamichi Choji. Hyuga Neji vs Aburame Shino. Sabaku no Gaara vs Rock Lee. All of them took this information in before the Hokage dismissed them. Naruto knew that this was going to test his 7 years of training to the limits. He needed some serious coaching. Super perverts, bloodline jutsus and tournaments. Back in Konoha, Naruto made a very careful list of things he wanted to study for the matches. However, the majority of them relied on outside help he was not guaranteed of getting. He came home to find Kakashi had left a note for him. Ototo. I have heard rumors of Jiraiya being back in town. I would highly suggest seeking him out for training. He can usually be spotted around women's hot springs. Congratulations again on making it to the main matches. Your Nissan. Naruto's eyes lit up. Jiraiya should be able to help him immensely with his training, assuming he found him. Naruto resolved to hunt the man down tomorrow, but for now, he needed sleep. Next morning, 9:30 a.m. Naruto had dropped by Training Area 19 to tell his teammates as well as Kurenai that he was going to go hunt down Jiraiya for training, who was rumored to be in town. Kurenai rubbed her temples. Remind me not to go to the bathhouses until he's gone. All 3 students looked at her with raised eyebrows. You'll see what I mean when you find him, Naruto. When Kakashi said around, he meant around. Naruto nodded as he said goodbye to his team, promising to come back for visits when he could. He set off to Konoha's only hot springs, and went to the women's section, but instead of going inside, he took a detour around the outside, soon enough spotting a man peeking into the women's baths, giggling and scribbling notes onto a notepad. Naruto concealed his chakra and then snuck up on Jiraiya, before letting the chakra mask go, shocking the hell out of the Sannin. Jiraiya turned around to see a boy with sun-kissed blonde hair smiling lazily at him. What do you want, Gaki? Supervise my training. Jiraiya processed this for a second before he turned back to his research. Yeah right kid. Do you even know who I am? Naruto smiled lazily at Jiraiya. My Otusan sensei. This made Jiraiya's head whip around so fast that Naruto was amazed it hadn't fallen off. What did you say? I said you were by father sensei. Jiraiya's eyes narrowed. That's not funny, Gaki. Neither is the fact you disappeared from my life almost 13 years ago. Now that got Jiraiya's attention. His eyes narrowed before realization hit him when Naruto opened his eyes to reveal those sapphire blue orbs Jiraiya had known for so long. Coupled with the sun-kissed blonde hair, there was only one person this could be. Naruto. Naruto smiled again. Yup. Jiraiya wasn't sure about what to do. He'd been told that Naruto had died on the day of his birth, yet here he was, standing in front of him in the flesh, very real. Naruto saw the myriad of emotions wash over Jiraiya's face. Disbelief, confusion, anger, and finally, happiness. Jiraiya smiled at Naruto. Sorry about leaving you. I was told you died on the day of your birth. I took leave of Konoha because I had nothing left there for me. So, how's your life been? Naruto looked thoughtful. The first 4 years were hell. But Kakashi Nisan adopted me after I turned 4, and from them on, life's been pretty good. Jiraiya nodded. Okay. Well, I guess I could teach you a few things. However, not here. Jiraiya put his pen and notebook away, leading Naruto somewhere less populated. Outside Konoha, Jiraiya had led Naruto to a waterfall not too far from the west gate of Konoha. Once they arrived, Jiraiya turned to Naruto. So, tell me what you can do. Naruto nodded. Well, after Kakashi Nisan adopted me, I got training from the 4 Junin specialists. I learned from them for 7 years. I can open 3 celestial gates. My Nin, Gen, Tai, Armed Tai and Fuinjutsu are all extremely accomplished for my age, and I have 3 elemental affinities which are fire, lightning and wind. I graduated from the academy with a perfect record. I have 8 D-class missions, an A class that was disguised as a C class and an ongoing S class. The only thing I have no skill in is bloodline jutsus, but then again, I've never been taught one. Naruto became aware that Jiraiya's jaw was hanging down. Naruto looked at him in a bored fashion. Something wrong. Jiraiya closed his mouth and shook his head. No, I assume since you know about Arashi, you know about Kyuubi. Naruto nodded. Jiraiya though for a moment. How would you like to learn some bloodline jutsus? Naruto's eyes lit up and he nodded. We'll start you off with a relatively simple one. It's not so much a bloodline jutsu, as a jutsu handed down from student to pupil. The Kuchio's no jutsu. Naruto nodded. Which species is the contract with? The frogs. Naruto nodded. He'd heard about one of the other Sannin summoning slugs, so frogs couldn't be too bad. Naruto nodded. Sounds good. Jiraiya bit his thumb and formed the seals before summoning an orange frog that had a necklace on, with multiple swirling tattoos on its body. The frog unrolled its tongue and gave Naruto the summoning scroll. Naruto opened it to see several names in some sort of very traditional Japanese which he couldn't read. Naruto looked 2 spaces back from the one he would use and saw the name of Jiraiya there. The one closest to Naruto's spot had the name of Kazama Arashi. Naruto smiled sadly at this before he bit his thumb, writing his name with his blood before leaving his fingerprints before standing up, looking at Jiraiya. Seals. Bore. Dog, bird, monkey, ram. Remember to bite your thumb before the seals. Naruto nodded. He decided to start off with something small, so he bit his thumb and formed the seals. Kuchio's no jutsu. Naruto slammed his palm onto the ground, and when the smoke cleared, there was a small orange frog with some tattoos on it and a navy blue GI. The frog looked up at him. Who are you? Never seen you before. Naruto smiled at the frog. Name's Uzumaki Naruto. Gamakichi. If you want to play, give me a snack. Naruto smiled as he pulled out a scroll and pulled a packet of chips out of one of the seals, opening it and handing it to the frog. The frog looked up at Naruto. When I said a snack, you didn't have to give me a packet of them. Still, you seem like a nice guy. Catch you round, Naruto. Gamakichi took the chips and poofed out of existence. Naruto decided to try something bigger, so he bit his thumb and started forming the seals. With the amount of chakra Naruto was channeling, Jiraiya warily stepped back. Naruto slammed his palm onto the ground. Kuchio's no jutsu. The entire area was covered in smoke and Naruto found himself on top of one very big frog. The frog had a scar running over its left eyelid. He had a navy blue GI with a sword strapped to his side. Naruto looked at the frog, and the frog looked at him. What are you doing on my head, Gaki? Where's Jiraiya? Naruto looked lazily at him. I'm on your head because I summoned you. As for Jiraiya, he's down there somewhere. Gamabunta narrowed his eyes at Naruto before he burst out laughing. You summon me, the great Gamabunta-sama. Dream on, Gaki. Naruto smiled lazily at him. He knew how to deal with arrogant people like this. You're pretty stupid for a summon boss. The frog's eyes narrowed again at Naruto. Nanjato. Do you have any idea who you're talking to, Gaki? Yup. Someone who is unable to accept the fact that I summoned you. If you don't believe me, how about we make a bet to prove it? The frog smiled. A bet? What are the conditions? You have to do your best to throw me off your head by sunset. If you do, I'll accept your judgment on whether I summoned you or not. And if you win, you will allow me to summon you when I need to and you will listen to my orders. That's stupid. Afraid you'll lose. After having his credibility doubted like that, he decided to prove just how weak this kid was. Fine. Don't blame me when you die, Gaki. Gamabunta proceeded to try and get Naruto off his head in every way he could. He shook his head from side to side, jumping up and down, going underwater, resurfacing and taking a leap before resubmerging. This lasted for hours until the sun finally set. Naruto looked down at Gamabunta, trying just managed to hide his exhaustion. I win, Gamabunta. Gamabunta had to admit, this kid was good. He wasn't your average kid. He looked up at him. Fine. I'll listen to you and you can summon me whenever you want. Don't let it go to your head, Naruto. Naruto nodded and hopped down and Gamabunta disappeared. Jiraiya came out and looked at Naruto. Naruto, we're done for the day. Come back here same time tomorrow. Sure thing. Naruto walked off as Jiraiya went back to his research. Next morning, 10 a.m. Naruto had come back to the waterfall and spotted Jiraiya giggling as he peeked through some bushes. Naruto looked at him. I know you're a super pervert, but why do you peek whenever you get the opportunity? Jiraiya turned around. It gives me inspiration for my stories. Naruto didn't like this. Not one bit. Stories. You wouldn't happen to be the author of. Naruto's question was answered when Jiraiya removed an all too familiar orange book from his clothes. Naruto's sweat dropped. I knew it. Jiraiya perked up at the Naruto's reaction. Oh, you've heard of this book? Naruto shook his head. Heard isn't the right word. My Nisan is always reading those damn things. Jiraiya let out a restrained perverted giggle at the reaction. Seems I'm getting pretty famous. Naruto watched as Jiraiya put the book away and put on his business face. Naruto, today I'm going to teach you a jutsu that was invented by the Yondaime. The Rasengan. Naruto's eyebrows raised at this. Naruto had heard tales from Kakashi about the Rasengan. Jiraiya pulled out a water balloon from one of two large shopping bags that he had with him and filled it with water before holding it out in front of him. Okay, the first stage. Basically, you have to try and pop this balloon using only chakra. It combines the principle of the tree climbing exercise, which I'm sure you've done, with the principle of the water walking exercise. Watch. The balloon started stretching out at odd angles, as if something was struggling to get out. Finally, the balloon popped, water going everywhere. Naruto looked on, trying to analyze what had just happened. To further explain it, like with the tree climbing exercise, you must maintain a constant amount of chakra by focusing your mind and keeping that concentration. With the water walking exercise, you were taught to release a fixed amount of chakra continuously. So, to do the first step of the Rasengan training, you have to combine those two exercises by creating a continuous flow, and once you have released it, control it. Anyways, I'll leave you to figure out how to apply it. Good luck, Naruto. Jiraiya had given Naruto another filled water balloon and turned around when he heard the balloon pop. He stopped and slowly turned around to see that the balloon had indeed popped. Naruto smiled lazily. How long did Arashi take to make this jutsu again? Jiraiya didn't believe it. Naruto had just popped the balloon first try. Naruto looked at Jiraiya. The theory behind it is easy. I have very good chakra control. Adding several directions of chakra spin to the balloon isn't hard. Jiraiya nodded slowly as he pulled out a pair of rubber balls from the other bag. Jiraiya passed one to Naruto. For stage 2, you have to use 100% of your power to pop the rubber ball. Jiraiya demonstrated this as the rubber ball mutated hideously before exploding. Naruto raised an eyebrow. He held his ball and concentrated before the ball morphed hideously and then exploded, sending rocks and sand flying. Naruto smiled at Jiraiya, whose sweat dropped. This kid was scary. Jiraiya took out an empty water balloon and filled it up with air before sealing it. He threw it to Naruto and made another for himself. The third stage requires you to use all of the power from the second step and add the rotation from the first step. To successfully complete this level, you have to maintain the Rasengan without the balloon popping. Naruto nodded and concentrated. Jiraiya could sense that the Naruto had formed the Rasengan, and was maintaining it perfectly. Jiraiya felt ashamed. It had taken him 1.5 months to learn the Rasengan, and Naruto had learned all 3 steps in 3 goes. Naruto hadn't even broken a sweat. Naruto looked at Jiraiya. 3 years? I assume he spent the majority of that time doing something else. Jiraiya sighed. Arashi had only been inventing the Rasengan part-time during those 3 years, but he had definitely not done it first try. Jiraiya had expected this to take up a good chunk of the time between now and the main matches of the Chunin exams. Arashi, you created a genius, didn't you? Jiraiya was fast running out of options. He decided to teach Naruto Swamp of the Underworld. Naruto, how do you think you can handle a Doden jutsu I invented? Naruto raised an eyebrow. I don't have much skill for Doden jutsus, but I can try. Jiraiya nodded. This should hold him off for a while. It's called Doden. Yomi Numa. Seals or boar and tiger. Give it a try. Naruto nodded and formed the 2 seals, announcing the jutsu. Doden. Yomi Numa. The ground in a 30-meter diameter area darkened in color before turning into a clay-brown colored liquid. Jiraiya smiled. It was going to be a long time until he mastered this one. Jiraiya watched over Naruto part of the day, spending the other part researching. By the end of the day, Naruto had extended the swamp to 50 meters in diameter. As the final rays of sunlight diffusing through the atmosphere's many layers, which is usually associated with the red of a sunset or sunrise, turned a deep crimson, Jiraiya got up. Naruto, I'm going to get some rest. You coming? Naruto looked up, sweating and panting. I'll stay at this for several more hours. Same time. Jiraiya nodded. Don't push yourself too hard. Naruto smiled lazily at Jiraiya. If I don't push myself to my limits, I can never improve. I'll see you tomorrow. Jiraiya nodded. He's even got your guts, Arashi. This kid's going surpass even you. After another several hours which resulted in expanding the swamp by another few meters, Naruto noticed that the stars were out and the moon was hanging low in the sky. Naruto stretched and headed back to his apartment, dead tired from today's workout. When he got back, he had a short shower and crashed into bed. A week later. By the end of the following week, Naruto had increased the diameter of the swamp to several hundred meters and to a depth of about 100 meters. Jiraiya admitted Naruto had satisfactory mastery over the jutsu and started to teach him the basics of Yondaimi's modified Shushin no Jutsu. After several hours of explaining, Naruto tried it. He partially achieved it, however. Naruto was still partially disappearing with a regular burst of speed, but the barest flicker of yellow was seen when he activated and deactivated it. Naruto kept training for the rest of the day and well into the night after Jiraiya had left. By the end of the week, Naruto could do it to Jiraiya's satisfaction. Jiraiya had one jutsu that would help Naruto immensely. Naruto, I'm going to teach you one more jutsu and then introduce you to another one, which I will leave you to learn. This jutsu is called Hari Jizu. The reason I'm teaching you this is because your hair is long enough for it. To do it, just channel chakra to the roots of your hair and force it to grow into a hardened shield of spikes that will protect you from most taijutsu attacks. This is how it's done. Jiraiya formed a half-ram seal and his hair exploded out in all directions, covering him in a way a hedgehog or echidna would if they rolled up into a ball. Naruto tried it and his hair slowly grew at first until he pumped more chakra into and his hair encased him in a shield much like Jiraiya's except blonde instead of white. Naruto let the jutsu go and looked at Jiraiya who smiled at him. You're something else, Naruto. I don't have the implements here to teach you the final jutsu. Meet here tomorrow one last time and I'll give you something that enabled your dad to do the Hiraishin. Naruto nodded and smiled. Catch you round. Jiraiya nodded and went back to his research, leaving Naruto with a free day. He decided to go and meet up with his team. Training Ground 19. Kurenai was teaching both Choji and Shikamaru some theory behind some genjutsu or another when Naruto walked up to them. They greeted him and after some small chat, Naruto asked how things were going with their training. Shikamaru looked up at the clouds. It's troublesome, but I'm starting to learn a few genjutsu as well as another Nara clan jutsu. Naruto nodded. Choji smiled at Naruto. I'm really not that good with genjutsu, but I'm learning the next Akamichi clan jutsu. Naruto nodded as Kurenai looked at him. So, what have you learned from Jiraiya, Naruto? Naruto smiled at her. The only area I had nothing in. Bloodline jutsus. All three of their eyes widened. Naruto explained. I've signed a summon contract that both Jiraiya and my dad signed. I've also learned 2 jutsus that my dad created and another 2 Jiraiya created. Tomorrow, I'm to learn a jutsu that my dad his name is the Yellow Flash of Konoha. At the last part, their eyes widened considerably. Hiraishin. Naruto nodded. I won't have it ready in time for the exam though. Shikamaru sighed. Mendokusei. Despite the fact that in the upcoming exam we're opponents, I still think you're friends before that. I need to speak to Nissen though, so I'll catch you round. They waved goodbye to Naruto as he left the training field and headed to his apartment. Naruto's apartment. Naruto got home to see Kakashi taking a snooze in the chair. When Kakashi heard the door open, he looked up. Hey Naruto. You're back early. Naruto shrugged. Jiraiya's not going to teach me anything until tomorrow. Kakashi nodded. So, want some help? Naruto nodded. Is it possible for a person to sign more than one summoning contract? Kakashi raised an eyebrow. There's no strict rule against it, however, it's not common practice. I take it you signed the contract with the Toads? Naruto nodded. Well, I have no qualms about letting you sign the canine contract, however, it's up to them to accept you. Naruto nodded as Kakashi led Naruto outside to the enclosed garden of the apartments, which was really nothing more than a square patch of lawn. Kakashi bit his thumb and formed the seals. Kuchio's no jutsu. The smoke cleared and a fairly large dog was there. He wore a navy blue gi and wore sunglasses as well as a Konoha Hitai 8. The dog dropped the scroll and Kakashi opened it. Naruto didn't recognize any other names apart from Kakashi. Naruto bit his thumb and signed his name next to Kakashi's, ending in his fingerprints. Naruto realized his problem. If he summoned the boss of the canines here, he'd destroy several of the apartment complexes. So he looked to Kakashi, who smiled. Go summon him where there's a bit more space. Naruto nodded and walked off to a training ground that was usually empty. Today was no different, so he went into the center and bit his thumb, molded a massive amount of chakra and slammed his palm onto the ground. Kuchio's no jutsu. After the smoke cleared, Naruto was looking into the eyes of a rather large wolf with gray fur that had a hint of blue in it. The wolf looked at him. Who are you? You better have a good explanation as to why you're on my head, Gaki. Naruto smiled in his lazy fashion. I summoned you. The wolf narrowed its eyes. It grinned before letting loose a barking laugher. You summon me. Do you expect me to believe that? Naruto's sweat dropped. We're all summon bosses like this. He decided to show this boss just who he was dealing with. I'll prove I summoned you. Naruto jumped off the wolf's head and bit his thumb, forming the seals. Kuchio's no jutsu. A huge cloud of smoke wrapped around the new figure, before revealing Gamabunta. The two summon bosses stared at each other. Naruto smiled at the wolf, however, he was almost completely exhausted of chakra. Summoning two summon bosses was not a feat to be sneezed at. The wolf looked at Gamabunta. Hisashibari Dana, Gamabunta. Indeed it has, Fenrir. Almost 200 years. Let me guess, Naruto summoned me to prove he summoned you. Fenrir smiled in that feral manner that all canines did. I know who summoned me, I just wanted to see if the Gaki was worthy of summoning me. At that point, Naruto fell to his knees, panting and sweating. Fenrir looked at Naruto. I'm amazed a human his age can summon two summon bosses at all, let alone not dying from complete chakra exhaustion. Listen Naruto, canines pride themselves on their loyalty. Remember that, as you humans say, scratch my back and I'll scratch yours. I'll let you summon my pack for now, but until you prove your loyalty, you may not summon me, are we clear? If you do, your signature of the canine contract is void. Naruto nodded. Sure thing. Fenrir poofed out of existence, leaving Naruto with Gamabunta. Gamabunta looked up at Naruto. I'm getting out of here. The kids are waiting for me back home. Naruto nodded and jumped down as Gamabunta raised a webbed hand. Yeah. Gamabunta disappeared as Naruto collapsed, panting. Little did Naruto know that there was a very livid Uchiha staring at him from the edge of the training field. Where does Naruto get so much power? Naruto lay there, recovering his chakra for the better part of the day. At about nightfall, Naruto got up and headed home. He really needed to prove his loyalty to the canines. He didn't know when he might need Fenrir's help. Naruto opened the door to see Kakashi smiling at him. I'm sure most of the Junins of Konoha felt that Naruto. No wonder you look like that. I suggest taking it easy for a while. Naruto nodded as he made himself a cup of instant ramen, too tired to make anything fancy. Once he'd eaten it with Kakashi eating his miso soup, Naruto excused himself and took a shower before throwing his clothes into the laundry basket in his room and hit the sack. 2 weeks and 4 days later. It was the day of the Chunin main matches. There were a few clouds in the sky, apart from that, it was a perfect day. Everyone was living the hype usually associated with such a big tournament. People specifically wanted to see how both years' top rookies would do, namely Hyuga Neji and Uzumaki Naruto. People still had some reservations about Naruto, but they would see what he was capable of before passing their final judgment. The examinees walked in through the large gate at ground level and stood facing the stands of people which were packed to capacity. Everyone's favorite Senbon chewing Junin, Shiranui Genma stood facing the examinees. You guys are the reason everyone has gathered. Like with the preliminaries, the rules are the same, even if the terrain is different. You will fight each other until one gives up, is unable to fight or dies. Remember, if I decide to stop the match, you will listen to me. They nodded as the Hokage welcomed the crowd. Welcome ladies and gentlemen to the first biannual Chunin exam finals. We will now begin the main matches between the finalists. Please enjoy the show. Genma turned back to the Chunin hopefuls. First match is between Uzumaki Naruto and Inuzuka Kiba. The rest of you, go up to the waiting room until it's your turn. The other 6 left the arena for the waiting room. Kiba smiled at Naruto. It's been a while since we went against each other in anything but a friendly spar, Naruto. Naruto smiled. Yup. Genma made the announcement. Then, first match, Hajime. The crowd roared their approval as the 2 competitors stood stone still, gauging each other's reactions. After a full minute of tension-filled silence, Kiba smirked and hurled 4 kunai at Naruto, who dodged to the left, letting them impact the wall. Kiba formed a ram seal and used one of his clan jutsus. Gijyu Ninpu. Shikyaku no Jutsu. Kiba's fingernails extended as his chakra morphed his body. Kiba disappeared in a blur of speed and reappeared next to Naruto, engaging in a ferocious taijutsu match. Naruto noticed Kiba's speed had improved dramatically, and Naruto had to block about half the punches and kicks while he dodged the rest. The crowd was captivated as Naruto danced through the air, avoiding Kiba's blows and blocking the ones he couldn't. Kiba knew that by himself, he wasn't going to get anywhere with this, so he disappeared and reappeared next to Akamaru. Akamaru. The dog barked and jumped onto Kiba's back before transforming into a clone of Kiba. Jujin Bunshin. Both of them charged in, reappearing in front of and behind Naruto. Naruto saw his predicament. Blocking one Kiba's blows was hard enough. 2 would be impossible. Before either of them could land a punch, Naruto formed a single hand seal. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. A lot of the crowd's eyes widened as a perfect copy of Naruto appeared beside him and took on Akamaru while the real Naruto took on Kiba. Naruto was trying to slowly separate the pair, as together they were a force to be reckoned with. The 4 fighters on the field continued to exchange blows until Akamaru got lucky and punched the clone in the stomach through a hole in the clone's defenses, dispelling it. Akamaru went back to help his master with the real Naruto. Naruto saw his predicament, and just as they were about to land a blow on him, he turned into a flash of yellow light and just vanished. Both Kiba and Akamaru stumbled before gaining their footing to see Naruto reappear with the same yellow flash at the other end of the field. Everyone just stared. Murmurs of "Haraishinen, yellow flash," could be heard throughout the audience. Kiba looked at Naruto with wide eyes. Wah, what was that? Naruto smiled at Kiba. A modified version of the Shushin no Jutsu unique to Konoha. Kiba tried to regain his senses as both he and Akamaru took out 8 shuriken each. He hurled them at Naruto to prepare for the next attack. Every time I see you, you just get faster, Naruto. Akamaru. Let's go. Gatsuga. Naruto dodged the shuriken as both Kiba and Akamaru turned into gray cyclones as they crisscrossed the field, ripping up the ground as they tried to confuse Naruto where they would attack from. After a few seconds, they broke off and tried to hit Naruto from 2 different directions. Naruto jumped out of the way only to see both of them come at him again while he was still in mid-air, unable to block. I see a weak spot. Both cyclones slammed into Naruto and then broke out as Naruto fell to the ground, not moving. Gotcha. Naruto poofed into a log that had one of the larger varieties of explosive notes attached to it, and Kiba's eyes widened as the note fizzled down to its last part and exploded, sending Kiba and Akamaru flying back into the stadium wall. The impact dispelled Akamaru's henge and they both looked at Naruto, who had reappeared in the middle of the stadium. Kiba grit his teeth from the pain when he decided to use his last resort. Akamaru, we're going to use it. Let's go. Akamaru got up and Kiba charged at Naruto and grabbed onto his arm before Naruto had the chance to move. Now, Akamaru. Akamaru jumped into the air and span, urinating all over the area as Naruto narrowed his eyes. Dogs urinated on things to mark them. Naruto used another kawarimi to replace himself with a log, but still got hit with a small amount of the urine. Dynamic marking. Seiko. Now Akamaru. Jinju Kanbi Henge. Sotaro. Both Akamaru and Kiba were surrounded by a cloud of smoke which cleared to reveal a massive white wolf with 2 heads. The wolf had crimson eyes and was salivating like mad. Both heads looked at Naruto and let the hint of a smile touch their lips. Naruto smiled as he did the 2-hand seals for a jutsu. We won't let you. Naruto slammed his palms onto the ground as the white wolf ran at Naruto. Doden. Yomi Noma. The ground of the entire stadium turned into a sea of ochre-red liquid which was like glue. It stopped the double-headed wolf in its tracks as it began sinking. Gah! What is this? Naruto stood up. It's a Doden jutsu. This swamp is about 100 meters deep. The more you struggle, the faster you sink. The wolf smiled. Like quicksand. Huh, but did you count on this? Garoga. The wolf began spinning and sending the red liquid everywhere as it turned into a white and blue tornado. Naruto narrowed his eyes, realizing there was only one option left. He muttered, Kai, returning the ground to its original state and bit his thumb and formed the seals. Kuchio's no jutsu. The smoke cleared to reveal a mainly gray frog with an orange back slightly larger than the wolf that wore a green gi and had a very long katana strapped to its back. The frog saw the danger as it pulled the blade off its back and met the attack. The tornado kept going, pushing the frog towards the wall. The wolf jumped back and prepared for another go. If the frog hit the wall, it was over, so Naruto looked at the frog when an idea struck him. Can you give me a short burst of oil? The frog nodded and his cheeks puffed up and Naruto formed 2-hand seals. Kaden. Kyukyoku Gukaku no Jutsu. Naruto's fireball hit the oil and the arena exploded into flames as the crowd winced at the massive amount of heat the fireball generated, even from their seats. The fireball lasted all of 3 seconds as it washed over the wolf, doing just enough damage to dispel the henge and leave both of them on the ground, suffering from exhaustion, but only minor burns that were easily treatable. Naruto thanked the toad as it left. Naruto walked up to Kiba, who smirked at Naruto. That was clever. I didn't expect you to use any of those jutsus, especially not that last one. So, how do I rate? Naruto smiled. Kiba, that was a great match. You forced me to reveal 3 new jutsus in the first match. I didn't make the fireball last long enough to permanently damage you, as I know when I have to use terminal force. And a match with a close friend, not matter how serious it is not the time to use that sort of power. I expect your family to be proud of you. I am. Good work, my friend. Kiba smiled at the recognition as he passed out. Genma smirked. Shosha. Uzumaki Naruto. The crowd went wild as Naruto walked up to the contestants' box, where he got pats on the back from Choji and Shikamaru, a nod from Shino and Neji and an explosion of youth comment from Lee. Naruto noticed Gaara had a rather manic expression on his face, one of a person who was just restraining himself from lashing out. The rookies and their Junin instructors were not only amazed at Naruto's power, but also in his sense of judgment he showed when dealing with Kiba's very damaging attack. Kurenai was most impressed with Naruto. Naruto, you're growing up so fast. So mature at such a young age. You really are something else. When the crowd settled down, Genma announced the next match. Second match contestants come down. Shikamaru and Choji went down to the arena and looked at each other. Choji smiled warmly at his teammate. Come on, Shikamaru. Ganbat. Same to you, Choji. Second match is between Nara Shikamaru and Akamichi Choji. Hajime. Choji started off as he formed a seal and used a trademark family jutsu. Baika no Jutsu. Choji pulled his limbs and head in, letting out plumes of chakra as he announced the next part of the combo. Nikuden Sensha. Choji flew up into the air and began spinning. Shikamaru looked scared as Choji came rolling at him with his favorite mantra. Roll, 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 roll. Shikamaru leapt out of the way and into the trees nearby as Choji rolled past him, clearly enjoying himself. Shikamaru sighed. Mendokusei. Choji came straight back at the tree and Shikamaru dodged as Choji snapped the tree like a twig. Shikamaru saw his chance as he landed. Kurenai no Jutsu. Shikamaru's shadow stretched out and caught Choji, who stopped spinning. Shikamaru smirked. Knowing you, Choji, you wouldn't let me catch you like that unless you had a reason. Choji smirked as he returned to normal size. Choji had found that the Nara's Kurenai no Jutsu may stop your body's movements, but it did not stop you from channeling chakra. Choji was surrounded by a wave of chakra which concentrated around his arm as he announced his jutsu. Buban Baika no Jutsu Kanbi. Shikamaru lost control of his Kurenai from the rather large aura of power coming off Choji while his right arm and hand grew to a disproportionate size, bringing the appendage around in a fast sweep of the area. Uday. Shikamaru jumped above the sweep and Choji returned his arm to normal while he started the next part, the combo. Hagi. Choji brought his right leg up and it grew in size as he brought it down on Shikamaru's prone airborne form. Shikamaru's eyes widened as he realized he was about to be flattened. Since he wasn't on the ground, Shikamaru couldn't use his clan jutsus, so he performed a kawarimi with a branch from the tree Choji had destroyed. The thick branch was shattered to splinters as Choji withdrew his leg. Choji jumped out of the way as he felt Shikamaru's shadow racing up behind him. Choji hopped and skipped with agility that belied his size as the shadow tendril chased after him. Choji noticed that Shikamaru wouldn't be able to extend his shadow much further, and after one last jump, the tendril stopped. Shikamaru sighed as he withdrew his shadow and put his hands together in his thinking pose. Choji used this time to pull out a scroll and procure a bag of chips, which he hurriedly ate to regain his chakra, and pulled out a special Akimichi food pill, increasing his chakra capacity temporarily. Shikamaru finished his thinking and gave Choji his shugi face. Choji smiled. Are we going to get serious now, Shikamaru? Yeah. Choji smiled as he prepared his new jutsu by releasing a massive wave of chakra that surrounded him in a blue shell and announced his jutsu. Cho Baika no Jutsu. Shikamaru's sweat dropped, as did the majority of the audience, as Choji grew absurdly huge and pulled out a scroll that was not one Naruto had given him, procuring a rather large wooden pole from it. Choji flipped the scroll back up and put it away before he proceeded to use the pole to slam it onto the ground when Shikamaru was. Shikamaru had not expected this and he hurried to amend his plans. Shikamaru continued dodging Choji's attacks before he had an idea. Shikamaru dodged the latest attack and jumped onto the pole before using chakra to make sure he stuck to it. Choji's eyes widened in surprise as he tried to shake Shikamaru off it, which he almost succeeded in doing as Shikamaru slapped a number of explosive notes to it and jumped clear as Choji brought the weapon around for a final swing. During this time, Choji was aware that Shikamaru had placed something on his ankles and looked down to see several explosive notes and stopped the pole above his head. Shikamaru chuckled. My clan jutsus are useless against you in this state. However, in exchange for size and power, you sacrifice a great deal of agility. While you brought it around for the final swing, it gave me several seconds to attach explosive notes to your ankles. You would have killed me and I would have killed you. Good match, Choji. Choji smiled as he returned to regular size and Shikamaru diffused the notes. Genma smiled. This match has ended in a tie. No one progressed to round 2 from this match. The group cheered and applauded the pair as they left the battlefield. Up in the stands, Kakashi turned to Kurenai. All your students are progressing rapidly. It's not surprising they made it this far. Kurenai nodded in acknowledgement as they exchanged a few more words before Genma announced the next match. Next match's contestants, get down here. Both Shino and Neji came down and faced off. Both of them calm, cool and collected. Shino with his hands in his pockets while Neji had his hands at his sides. This was one of the two fights the majority of people had come to see. Genma looked at each of them, seeing they were ready, he started the match. Third match is between Hyuga Neji and Aburame Shino. Hajime. Both of them remained still. Everyone in the crowd held their breath before Neji smirked. Naruto has a lot of confidence in your abilities, from what he has told me of you. I wish to see why. Shino didn't move a muscle as he spoke. Naruto also speaks quite highly of you. Neji smiled as he got into his Juken stance, but Shino did not get into any stance. Neji activated his Byakugan and charged Shino, leaving afterimages behind him. Shino raised hands to let his bugs free, but he could not do so in time as Neji struck his heart with his extended hand. Shino collapsed to the floor and burst into bugs, making Neji jump back. Neji saw Shino behind him sending a wave of bugs at him. Neji knew from his research that these bugs ate a person's chakra, so he decided to test the theory in the most extreme circumstances. He got down and released chakra from all his tenketsu spinning like a top. Hakusho Kaden. The bugs collided with the spinning wall of chakra and consumed a small amount of it before they were shredded to pieces. Eventually, both parties stopped their assault defense to minimize their losses. Neji knew that these bugs lived on chakra, and with his Byakugan could see that the bugs were eating Shino's chakra as well, leaving him with minimal chakra to use for jutsus. Neji saw a weakness in the Aburame method. As long as the bugs could not feed on chakra, they would not listen to him. So, Neji prepared for his clan's ultimate jutsu. He got into a stance which the Hyugas in the audience recognized immediately. This is it. You are within range of my divination. Shino raised an eyebrow at this claim as Neji prepared for the jutsu. Jiyukenho. Hake Rokujiyuyansho. Neji charged in and delved the first two strikes with blinding precision and speed. Hake. Nisho. Shino stumbled back as Neji danced acrobatically, delivering the next two. Yansho. Shino continued to stumble back as Neji pounded him with the next wave. Hasho. Jurokusho. Sanjunasho. Rokujuyansho. Neji pumped a lot of chakra into the combo and sent Shino flying back as he smirked. However, Neji was suddenly aware that his chakra was declining far more rapidly than it should. He looked at his hands and arms to see them covered in bugs. He also saw that from his legs came a trail of bugs that led to a small mound in the arena. Neji gasped. When did you? Shino got to his hands and knees, obviously in a lot of pain as he answered. Each time you sealed a tenketsu, I placed a large number of bugs onto your fingers. My clan not only have control over the bugs within us, but also bugs in the area that we have communicated with before. I came here for the past month almost every day to communicate and form a treaty with the nest of Kikai bugs living here. As long as they have some chakra to eat, whether it is my own or my opponent's, they will do as I ask them. Both of our clan techniques are ill-suited for each other. We both rely on chakra. Both of our clans concentrate on stopping the opponent's chakra flow. The best we could have hoped for was a tie, which is what happened. Neji fell to his knees as his chakra dropped to dangerously low levels. Shino continued panting as they both dropped to the ground, unconscious. Genma observed them before announcing the result. Neither opponent is able to fight. No one progresses from this round. Despite the result, the audience was content. Genma called the last contestants of the first round forward. Gaara used Suna Shushin to get to the arena while Rock Lee jumped over the railing. Rock Lee got into his Guken style while Gaara stood motionless. Genma started it off. Fourth and final match of round 1 between Rock Lee and Sabaku no Gaara. Hajime. Lee's eyes widened as he caught the cork of Gaara's gourd which Gaara had flung projected at him very discreetly. Please don't be too hasty. Lee crushed the cork and dropped it to the ground as he charged forward and launched into a taijutsu assault. Gaara's sand rose to protect him and Gaara never moved. After several more kicks and punches, Lee leapt into the air and launched several shuriken at Gaara, whose sand caught it and turned into a Suna Bunshin. The Suna Bunshin threw them back at Lee and Lee threw two more to cancel the attacks out. Lee ran in and tried several more attacks before he confirmed his suspicions. He would not be able to land a hit at this speed. Lee looked up into the crowd and saw Guy, who nodded. Lee smiled and jumped backwards before reaching into his orange leg warmers and pulled out weights. Naruto smiled. The looks on everyone's faces would be priceless. Lee held the weights up, displaying each weight had the kanji for guts on it. Yosh, I can move much easier now. Lee dropped the weights and the section of the arena around Lee was surrounded in a cloud of smoke as the weights hit the ground. Naruto saw everyone's expression and laughed. He only wished he had his camera here with him. Naruto stopped his laughter and mentally groaned when he heard Guy shout out to his student. Ike. Lee. OSSU. Lee charged at Gaara with blinding speed that shocked everyone. Lee punched at Gaara's Suna no Tate, breaking through it and disappearing, leaving a whistling noise in the air from the speed he was moving. He proceeded to smash the sand shield in places, leaving Gaara wide-eyed and looking frantically for Lee. Finally, Lee aimed a straight punch and smashed Gaara in the face, sending him sprawling. When he got back up, Guy could be heard with another one of his cheesy lines with matching genjutsu that even Kurenai couldn't make sense of, making everyone in the general vicinity rather afraid of the man. Seishoha. Bakuhatsuda. OSSU. Lee's eyes caught fire as he charged in again and proceeded to land several more hits on Gaara before Lee noticed that his attacks were having little effect, possibly because of the fact that Gaara had sand covering his face. Gaara's face twisted into a grin that can only be associated with serial killers and madmen. The sand replaced itself and Gaara looked at Lee. Come. Lee knew his only option left to get rid of that sand was to apply high damage from above the sand, so he undid the medical tape around his hands and prepared for his move. Prepare yourself. Lee charged in and created a ring of dirt around Gaara from running as fast as he was. Gaara was wary. Hurry up and come. As you wish. Lee broke out of the ring and gave Gaara a savage kick to the chin, but Gaara would not float. I'm not done yet. Lee pushed himself off the ground with his hands and proceeded to give Gaara a sickening combo of kicks that resounded throughout the stadium. The sand tried futilely to catch up to its master as Lee continued high into the sky. After the last one, Lee froze from the pain and shut his eyes before regaining his resolve, wrapping the bandage around Gaara, grabbing hold of him and began spinning until they were a blur. Take this. Omit Renge. The pair crashed into the ground, making it shatter under the impact, kicking up a huge cloud of dust and throwing rocks everywhere. Lee landed beside the crater, breathing heavily. That should have hurt. Lee noticed that part of Gaara's face crack and fall in, revealing nothing but an empty shell of sand. The whole body lost its color and disintegrated, much to everyone's chagrin. Nani. Lee turned around to see Gaara rise from the ground and smirk at him, laughing manically. Gaara formed a ram seal and smirked as the sand shot upwards before slamming into Lee, making him scream out in pain. Naruto knew that after opening the first gate like that, Lee was in no position to dodge from the pain it inflicted to his body. Naruto was forced to watch Gaara for the next 15 minutes toy with Lee before Lee looked up into the crowd and let a tear shed from his eye. Naruto could tell without looking that Guy was smiling at him. If this was any indication, this was bad. Very bad. Lee regained his speed, much to everyone's amazement. Lee stared at Gaara. Guy-sensei is smiling for me. That alone is enough to make me stronger. Far stronger. Naruto's eyes bulged. He was going to use his most powerful move. In what to others was extremely uncharacteristic, Naruto yelled out to Lee. Lee, don't you dare use that move. You'll die. Everyone stared at Naruto. Those close to him felt the waves of fear rolling off him and knew what he was saying was true. I'm sorry, Naruto-kun, but I have to. The condition to use it has been met. Lee focused himself and was surrounded by a column of chakra-infused wind. Gaara was unfazed. I don't know what you're doing, but this is the end for you. True. Either way, this move will decide everything. Gaara straightened and his hair began to rustle from the amount of wind Lee's chakra was displacing. Naruto-kun, I cannot be the only one who loses here. Guy-sensei, please acknowledge this. Now is the time. The rocks on the ground began lifting into the air and breaking as Lee concentrated further. Naruto saw that Lee's body was undergoing the transformation of the second gate, the energy gate. His body was turning red. Chakra began surging off Lee uncontrollably as he revealed himself in all his glory. Pupilless white eyes, hair standing on end and red skin. To abide by, and protect my way of the ninja. The third gate, the life gate. Kai. Lee began growling as his body was covered by a green aura and the chakra wind surrounded him turned blood red, while regular blue chakra surrounded him in a double helix shape. Lee squatted as he opened the next gate. Now, for the fourth gate, the wound gate. Kai. Lee was now screaming an unearthly scream as his body pulsed with power. He ducked and then charged at Gaara, ripping the ground up from under him as he kicked Gaara and the stadium was covered in dust which cleared to reveal Gaara flying up into the air with Lee nowhere to be seen. Naruto focused chakra to his eyes to assist them in seeing Lee's movements as a lot of chunins and junins in the audience were doing. The armor of sand again. Then how about this? Lee used a modified version of Shushin unique to him and Guy to reappear in front of Gaara and smashed him towards the ground, releasing a visible shockwave before using the Shushin to get behind Gaara and smashed him again up into the air again. This process repeated for well over 3 minutes until Lee got above him and prepared for the final attack. This is the end. Fifth gate, the forest gate. Kai. Lee was surrounded by a faint blue glow for a second before he charged at Gaara. Gaara tried to block but Lee used the Shushin one more time to get under Gaara's guard and punch him in the stomach sending him to the ground, but caught him from the bandages he had wrapped around his waist to pull him back up. Take this. Ura Renge. Lee slammed his right fist and foot into Gaara with all the strength he had left, watching him as he plummeted to earth, letting off cloud of dust and rock that again covered the stadium and Naruto saw Lee roll out of the cloud and come to a complete stop. When the cloud of dust dissipated, everyone saw Gaara surrounded by a small shield of sand that had protected him just enough to save his life. He was breathing heavily as he raised his hand shakily at Lee and sent a wave of sand at him while Lee tried pitifully to get out of the way. He couldn't even get out of the way with his muscles ripped and the sand closed in on Lee when it exploded outwards. When it cleared, everyone saw Naruto there, glaring at Gaara. Gaara looked at him. Why did you save him? Because, unlike you, I know when to stop a fight. Lee's muscles have been completely ripped to pieces. He is incapable of defending himself and you try and kill him. To me, Lee is an important friend I am willing to die for. If that means killing you to ensure he'll live, so be it. Gaara stiffened as he clutched his head and moaned in pain. Naruto stared at Gaara as he shakily got up, the gourd reforming on his back. Gaara started walking off as Genma announced the winner. Shosha. Everyone gasped as Naruto turned around to see Lee standing, his knees shaking, standing in his Guken style. Naruto ran to Lee. Lee, Yumera, you've done enough. Naruto gasped as his eyes began water before he saw what had really happened. Lee, you're still trying even after you've lost consciousness. I don't believe it. Lee, you're stronger than I could ever be. Shosha. Gaara. Guy appeared on the field and hugged Lee gently as he laid him on the ground. Naruto saw the medics rushing onto the field as they began checking Lee. After about 30 seconds, they made their analysis. Guy-san, Lee's injuries are severe. It's amazing he's still alive. If Naruto-san had not stopped that attack, this boy would most likely be dead now. With these injuries, it will take several months to heal with all of our current specialists working on him. Guy nodded solemnly as they carted Lee off to the medical facilities of the stadium to stabilize him before moving him to the hospital to receive emergency treatment. Genma turned back to the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, as with all Chunin exam finals, we will now have a 1-hour recess between the rounds. Slowly, people started getting up and leaving the stands to go to the bathroom, buy food and drink and stretch their muscles. All talk was of Naruto and Lee. Naruto left to check up on Lee when he got there. The medics saw him and one came over to him. Naruto-san, thank you for stepping in for Lee. If he had been hit with that sand, he would never have been able to be a shinobi again. Naruto nodded solemnly. Can I see him? The medic nodded and led Naruto into the room where Neji, Tenten and Guy were watching the medics working on Lee. They turned to Naruto. Guy began crying as he hugged Naruto, who stiffened. Naruto-kun, you are the epitome of youth. Thank you for saving Lee. Naruto nodded. No problem, Guy-sensei. Is there anything I can do for you to repay you for such a glorious display of youthfulness? Naruto could think of one thing and only one thing. How about letting go of me? It's kinda hard to breathe. Guy let go of Naruto and he gasped for air. Guy smiled at Naruto. My apologies, Naruto-kun. They chatted for a bit longer before Naruto decided to go see the others. 5 minutes later, in the shops of the stadium, all of the rookie genin and their Junin senseis except Sasuke had decided to get something to eat, settling for barbecue. They had taken their seat and were about to make their orders when Naruto walked in. Kiba called out to him. Oi, Naruto, over here. All conversation in the store stopped as they turned to see Naruto walking over to the long table and took a seat next to Kurenai. Hey guys. Ino looked at Naruto in awe. Naruto, what was that last move in your match? I've never seen anything like it. Naruto smiled at her as he made his order and explained. I knew that ninja frogs of a certain rank and above are able to produce oil, so I decided to use a Kaden Gukaku no Jutsu in tandem with the oil to make a giant fireball and tried and knock Kiba and Akamaru out of their henge, but not damage them enough to seriously hurt them. Kiba laughed. So you invented that on the spot? Naruto shrugged. Invented is probably not the right word. I think rediscovered is better. Considering all of the names I saw on the scroll of the frog contract, I'd be amazed if one of them hadn't done something similar before. Kiba smiled. You're something else, Naruto. I'm not surprised I lost. Don't put yourself down, Kiba. As I said, the fact that you forced me reveal 3 of the 5 jutsus I learnt during the last month says you're good. If I hadn't learnt those jutsus, I wouldn't be surprised if I had lost. When you use the Garoga, you seem to be spinning faster than your regular Gatsuga. Is that why you marked me with Akamaru? Because you were spinning too fast to see. Kiba's eyes widened. Yeah, so, what did you think of it? Naruto smiled. To tell you the truth, I was scared witless when I saw you spinning at me. If you had hit me, no matter how good I was, I would have been dead. It must take a great deal of chakra to maintain that form and maintain the spin. As a last resort, I'd say it's like Lee's Urarenge. Uses up a massive amount of chakra and after it, you won't be able to fight. Use it wisely, Kiba. Kiba nodded at the breakdown of the jutsu and Naruto's advice, taking it to heart. At the mention of Lee, Shikamaru's eyes narrowed. How is he? Naruto turned serious. The doctors say if I hadn't jumped down there, he'd be dead now. Lee's muscles have been completely torn to shreds and his bones have suffered minute fractures. With all of the nurses and doctors helping him, he should recover in about 3 or 4 months. That's why I didn't want him to use that jutsu. When Guy was teaching it to Lee and explained the effects, he offered to teach it to me, but I declined. I wouldn't be willing to go that far to defeat an enemy. After seeing how Gaara survived it, I'm glad I didn't. A player who obtains a Pyrrhic victory cannot move their piece forward. Lee unfortunately never realized that until now. Luckily, he'll get the chance to learn from that lesson. Shikamaru nodded. The meat for their orders arrived and was placed in front of them as they took several pieces of meat and placed them on the multiple cooking racks that covered a barbecue that was attached to the underside of the table. After their meat had cooked, they picked it up and ate it, placing more meat on the cooker as they continued chatting. After about 35 minutes, a message played over the loudspeaker. The next round matches will begin in 10 minutes. Will all competitors please report back to the waiting box? Thank you. Naruto polished off the last piece of meat and sighed in contentment. Most of them were staring at the speed with which Naruto ate. He never even lowered his mask for long enough for them to see his face. He noticed them staring at him and smiled. I learned from the best. Nissan can polish off a large bowl of ramen in less than 3 seconds. Pieces of meat like this are no problem for me. Everyone's sweat dropped as Naruto smiled. One day, I'll show you guys my face. Not yet though. They nodded as they paid for their own meals and left. Naruto separated from the rest of them and headed towards the members' entrance, his friends wishing him luck. Once he got there, he saw Gaara was already there. There was only one match left. Uzumaki Naruto vs Sabaku no Gaara. Naruto, Gaara, you two are up. They both went down to the arena and stood facing each other. Finals, Uzumaki Naruto vs Sabaku no Gaara. Hajime. Genma jumped back as Naruto glared at Gaara. That was a cowardly thing you did before. Didn't you feel any remorse whatsoever? No. The reason for my existence is to kill everyone in the world besides me. While there are people in the world to let me feel that, the world is wonderful. Naruto sighed. This guy was one nutcase. That love symbol on your forehead is rather ironic, isn't? What exactly do you love, apart from killing people? I love only myself and fight only for myself. That is what makes me so powerful. That kind of loneliness is what makes you strong. Naruto smiled lazily at him. You're not the type of guy to see the truth unless I beat it into you. Try me, Uzumaki Naruto. With pleasure. Naruto used his modified version of Shushin to slug Gaara in the face, sending him flying into the wall of the stadium. Gaara, I know that I will have to show you jutsus that I have never shown people before. You are indeed strong, but not because of loneliness. You are strong because of what you are. Gaara's eyes widened. Naruto was going to call him a monster. You are strong because you are the container for a greater demon. It took a while to figure out that demonic chakra was, and I finally identified it if your fight against Lee. You're the container for the Aikibi no Shukaku. It's a sad fate, one that the containers get no say in. However, if you truly want to become strong, use the demon's destructive powers to defend your friends. That way, it shows you have more willpower than the demon you contain instead of murdering everyone left, right, and center. Shut up. Gaara was clutching his head and screaming in agony as the Suna no Yoroi started cracking, and Gaara shook his head from side to side until his gourd started cracking and formed some sort of veiny appendage that grew over his right hand and right side of his face. You are my prey. Gaara extended his modified hand and tried to crush Naruto, who jumped out of the way. Gaara proceeded to wreak havoc as he laughed manically. Are you scared of me, Uzumaki Naruto? Do you fear my existence? Show me this true power you speak of. Confirm it. Confirm your existence. Attack me. As you wish. Naruto held out his right hand and the chakra condensed into it, forming a sphere that looked like a miniature typhoon. There was a collective murmur in the crowd as Naruto announced the name of the jutsu. Rasengan. Naruto charged at Gaara and Gaara charged at him. Naruto aimed the Rasengan at Gaara's chest as it impacted, and Naruto let the Rasengan grow in size by releasing a little bit of control over its form. Gaara screamed in agony as the Rasengan surrounded him in a sphere of wild light that took him to the far wall, ripping up the ground in its path before it exploded against the wall. This Gaara is the kind of power that will make you strong. The kind of power that you use to protect your friends. Gaara started laughing as he got up, the severely damaged area of his stomach regenerating so fast it was visible. I see. This is the kind of pain that makes me feel alive. You are truly interesting, Uzumaki Naruto. By killing you, I can get an even stronger sensation of life. Naruto narrowed his eyes as Gaara completed the transformation and glared at Naruto. Naruto bit his thumb and formed the seals as he concentrated on which animal he wanted to bring out. Kuchio's number jutsu. A cloud of smoke about twice the size of a human appeared, and from it was something that looked to be half dog, half wolf. The canine looked up at him. So, you're that new kid. What do you want? Naruto pointed to Gaara and the canine's eyes narrowed. As that, Shukaku. His container. I see. Well, let's move, pup. The canine charged at Gaara, who extended his hand far too fast for either of them to see as Naruto was knocked off his summon and the summon was slammed up against the wall while Gaara separated his hand from his arm, regrowing it. Show me, Uzumaki Naruto. Show me you are willing to die for your friends. If you don't defeat me, the sand holding that canine will slowly crush him to death. Are you fearless enough to save him? Naruto disappeared and reappeared next to the canine before forming a single hand seal, muttering, Kai, while Gaara charged at him. You don't have time for that. Naruto roared as he punched the hand of sand, sending the sand everywhere. When the smoke cleared, Naruto had freed the canine and the last of the sand on the wall was dropping to the ground. Are you alright? Yeah, fine. Naruto looked up to see Gaara going for the canine again as Naruto shoved it out of the way and took the hit himself, flying back and creating a crater in the arena wall. Naruto slowly got up while the canine came over to him. You should be worrying about yourself, pup. Guess so. Thanks for your help. The canine nodded as Gaara charged him. Good luck. The canine poofed and Naruto jumped out of the way to avoid being nailed. I've got to think of something. Naruto had one last option as he pulled out 2 scrolls while dodging another of Gaara's swipes. Gaara recognized it immediately, as did the other people who had been present in the prelims. However, they did not know it was a modified version. Naruto landed and formed 3 hand seals before announcing his jutsu. Ninpu Kuchio's Fubiki no Kunai. Everyone's eyes widened at the name and the arena exploded into smoke. 2 pillars of smoke rose. They were not green and black like last time, this time they were red and blue. Naruto jumped up into the middle of the double helix of the scrolls and began palming the scrolls and hurling kunai at Gaara, who smiled and blocked them with his sand arms. After Naruto had finished, Gaara laughed. Did you really hope an attack like that would work? Naruto smiled. Yup. Now for the last part of it. Daibakua. Everyone's eyes widened as the entire arena flashed before letting off an almighty explosion that the whole of Konoha felt. Once it settled, they saw that Gaara was on the ground, panting. He was completely soaked in blood and he had lost his sand body. Gaara tried to get up but couldn't as he was aware of Naruto walking over to him. Gaara's eyes widened in fear. Don't come close to me. The pain of being alone is completely out of this world, isn't it? Naruto collapsed to his knees in front of Gaara and began panting. Gaara's eyes widened. That pain of being unwanted. Of being despised. I've felt it too. However, people saved me from that cold hell and accepted me. If you dare harm them, I will kill you. I fight for those I love and cherish, not for myself. That's what makes one strong, Gaara. Fighting for those important to you. A ninja's true power isn't brought out until the lives of those that mean the most to them are put in jeopardy. That is when the true power of a ninja will take form. Remember that. Gaara got a blank look on his face that people who were lost deep in memory and thought wore. Genma checked Gaara and smiled. Gaara is unable to continue, making Uzumaki Naruto the winner of the Chunin selection exams. The crowd erupted into thunderous applause and cheering as Naruto dropped face down on the ground. Naruto whispered to himself, Kurenai-chan. I did it. Naruto fell unconscious as the medics came out and took both Naruto and Gaara away for medical treatment.